virtual training workshops on the use of the Simplified Planning Tool SPT 3.0 for the Renewable Portfolio Standards RPS compliance plan of off-grid mandated participants. Regional training for Mindanao, conducted by the Department of Energy in collaboration with the European Union supported Access to Sustainable Energy Program. Thank you for joining us today. We would like to acknowledge the presence of our participants in this training. We have participants from the Dinagat Island Electric Cooperative or DIELCO Incorporated, from the Mindanao Development Authority, AIEC Island Light and Water Energy Corporation, Global Clean Hybrid Energy Corporation, the DOE-REMB and REB TSMD, the National Power Corporation, Provincial Government of Cotabato, University of the Philippines Los Baños, Department of Energy, and the Philippine Star. To formally open this activity, may I call on the Chairman of the Renewable Portfolio Standards Composite Team, Assistant Secretary Redentor E. De Lola of the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Cross. Good afternoon. Mayong hapon sa tanan. Welcome to this training. No, this is the third batch, and we're joined by our Mindanao participants. So, good afternoon and welcome. No? Daghang kayong salamat for giving us your time, being with us this afternoon. Pati na pud ugma, no? Because this is a two-day event that we will be trained by our partners from RLI. No? So, as we are all aware, the Renewable Portfolio Standards, or the RPS, implementation rules for the off-grid areas, same as the on-grid area, no? It aims to contribute to the growth of the renewable energy industry by diversification of energy supply, thereby spurring socio-economic development and helping address environmental concerns. This also rationalizes the use of course, ang universal charge, no, for missionary electrification, and eventually help us improve our self-sufficiency in power generation. Much has been happening lately, and if you've been following the news, there are pronouncements by the department. Now, all of these things are really geared towards our full support, no, sa utilization of renewable energy, and improving the share of RE in our power mix, not just on-grid nato nga mga utilities, but as well as our off-grid areas as well, where all of us here in this training are working on, no? So this is a very good event for us to learn about a lot of concepts in improving the renewable energy share in the mix sa ato ang supply sa off-grid areas. This afternoon, we're very glad to be joined by our experts from RLI. Of course, we've seen Toby earlier, no? Hopefully Paul and Philip will be able to join us as well. They are our partners in this Simplified Planning Tool 3.0 training. No? So they'll guide us through the use of the software. Of course, together with some personnel, no? Some trainers from the NEA, from DOE-REMB, and the DOE Power Bureau. No? We're also joined by our partners and members of the Renewable Portfolio Standards. No? Today, we have Attorney Mona Di Malanta, the chairman of NREB. We also have Mr. Clares Alocon of PMC, our RE registrar. And of course, we have Director Mylene Capongcol of REMB. So all of this wouldn't be possible without the support, of course, of EU-ASEP, no, the EU Access to Sustainable Energy Program. So sila ang atuang partner, no, together with RLI in this endeavor. And of course, the conduct of the trainings are also um, being organized and supported by our secretariat, no, headed by the DOE Technical Services Management Division. No, ang ilang head si June Escobar, no. So they're instrumental in organizing this event for us. So the objective really of this capacity building is to equip the mandated participants in the development and the preparation of their respective RPS compliance plan using the simplified planning tool 3.0. So as the name suggests, this already went through a lot of modification and improvements. No? This is in line with the intention of the RE law and the RPS off-grid rules or the program in promoting the increased generation of RE in off-grid areas to achieve a more affordable and reliable supply of electricity. We expect that each representative present today have prepared katong mga gi-request sa inyo nga dalon ninyo mga data sets, because the output of this simulation or these exercises and the individual case study, especially on the second day, shall be your initial submission, which shall be evaluated by the DOE through the RPS composite team. As mentioned earlier, this is a very good opportunity for us to learn about a lot of concepts in getting that optimal mix in our supplies of grid areas. And concepts about privatization are just very few of what we will be able to learn. No? We'll also be able to collaborate and further prepare for our compliance plan, especially on the RPS of grid rules. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for giving us your time, for joining us this afternoon, and tomorrow we would have wanted to meet everybody, especially this is a Mindanao event, so we would have gathered siguro in one of the hotels here in Davao, no? But given the situation that we're faced with, we cannot do that. But we have to move on and then still do the things that are expected from us. So that's why we're doing this training or this webinar through this virtual platform. Hopefully, our situation improves. No, kita diri sa Mindanao, we're not spared from this pandemic. Bisan kami diri sa Davao, we've experienced, or we're experiencing surge of cases yun. For the past few days, murag number 1 ata ang Davao in the entire country for the number of cases. So we really, although we wanted to, we really cannot meet each other face to face. But we're given this opportunity again to continue with our training through with the use of this virtual platform. And I hope everybody takes advantage of this opportunity. And I hope this activity this afternoon and the activity tomorrow will be very fruitful and will really help us a lot in completing our compliance plans for RPS off-grid. Again, daghang kayong salamat sa tanan. Keep safe. Sa ginaingon pa namo dito sa Davao, pagtigom o kwarta, pagpundo sa balay, pagsalba o ginabuhi. Daghang kayong salamat, dalaygon ng Diyos.
Mayang salamat, Asik Red. So, ma-feel good ninyo ang pagpangga ni Asik Red sa mga electric cooperatives of power generators labi na diha sa Davao. Salamat kayo, Asik Red. Thank you. And for now, to give us the overview and updates on the RPS off-grid rules, we have with us the head of the chairperson of the National Renewable Energy Bureau, Attorney Mona C. Di Malanta. Good afternoon, Attorney Mona.
Good afternoon, Kraus. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well? Kraus?
Yes,
okay.
Attorney.
Yes, all right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just fix the screen on my side. Okay, right. So, magandang hapon po sa lahat. I am actually, I was listening to Asek Red's introduction, and I could almost feel how sentimental
Yes.
this particular session is for him, and maybe for Kraus also. Because now, today, Asek Red is taking it to home. So he's in his home base. We're talking to we are joined by the mandated participants in Mindanao. And I know for you, of course, for most of you who are from Mindanao and who are joining us from Mindanao, this is taking a very serious, very personal tone, like Asset Red with him. But also, I think for all of us who are outside Mindanao, but also, of course, in terms of the nation and in terms of all our being Filipino, napaka-importante po ng ating ginagawa ngayon, especially now that we're talking about the off-grid situation in Mindanao. I think before I go into the introduction of the RPS off-grid rules, just putting it to context, I just was reminded when Asek Red was speaking about the promise that renewable energy holds for the nation as a whole, because of course we want to improve the share of RE, as Asik already mentioned. But there's another dimension to RE that I think is quite promising in helping us face a certain challenge that is quite I think more pronounced in Mindanao, our household electrification levels. Because while nationwide, we are in the 90s already, 90% range for household electrification. In Mindanao, that number is actually quite lower. I think we're based on DOE data as of end December 2019. It's just almost 80% household electrification in Mindanao. And for the off-grid situation, I think the promise that RE holds is really more significant for facing this challenge of household electrification. And this is why this exercise today and tomorrow is very important, especially for our stakeholders in Mindanao. Kasi po maganda talaga yung pwedeng paratingin na solusyon ng pagkakaroon ng optimal supply mix when we are addressing this situation in Mindanao. As I think Asek also mentioned, and I'm sure he shares the same sentiment, the promise for this exercise is not just to comply with the rules, not just to make sure that nobody gets penalized, because at the end of the day, it's not the penalties that we're after. It's really the power that we are after, and it's particularly power that's coming from renewable energy sources that we are after. So the penalty is not, of course, we take the penalty seriously, but this exercise is not about so you will be spared or so that people will be spared of penalties. The point of this exercise is how do we optimize the natural resources that we have, that our areas are blessed with, and how do we make sure that our people get to enjoy the natural resources that are already found in our shores, or in fact even in our waters. So I know in Mindanao where this is already very familiar, because Mindanao is predominantly hydro based, but there's still a lot of renewable energy resources that we can utilize in Mindanao, particularly for the off-grid areas. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here today and tomorrow, so that we can make use of the tools that are made available to us for us to find that answer. We know what the situation is. We know what the problem is. These tools are here so that they can be used to find answers, solutions for our respective areas. So, Kraus, can you put up the slide so that we can go over the rules so that we're all on the same page. Let's go over the rules issued by the Department of Energy with respect to the Renewable Portfolio Standard. Next slide, please. Okay, so legal basis in terms of ano bang pinagmumulan nito? Sino ba nakaisip nito? Sino bang pasimuno ng RPS? The RPS particularly, the legal mandate for the RPS is found in the Renewable Energy Act. But even before the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 was there, in the EPIRA and also going further back to the DOE Charter, there is already that policy, that national policy to promote the utilization of indigenous and new renewable energy resources in the country. Again, it's maybe something that we overlook or something that we take for granted, but we are quite blessed with natural resources in our country. And the most sensible way of going about powering our economy again, especially if we're looking at a post-COVID scenario, the most sensible way of powering our economy again is by utilizing the resources that are already available. We don't need to import fuel to use in our power generation facilities. We already have nature that's providing us with these resources, and I think that's also the wisdom behind the recent pronouncements of the DOE. Let's go back to our roots. Let's go back to where we came from, and where we came from is really an economy that stood on the basis of our hydro resources and our geothermal resources. And now we have new technology that have actually been allowing us to harness also the resources of the sun, of the wind, and other energy components of water. So let's go back to that. And that's the point of having a minimum percentage of our energy sales for the mandated participants to be coming from renewable energy resources. And this is what RPS is about, Renewable Portfolio Standard. Next slide, please. Okay. So in terms of this circular that was issued by the Department of Energy implementing the mandate of the RPS under the RE Act, there are two components to it, the on-grid and the off-grid rules. For the off-grid rules, the basis at the heart of it all is this optimal supply mix that we need to come up with for each area. It's a recognition that the situation on an area per area basis is going to be different. So it's not a one-size-fits-all type of approach. There is a recognition that there are unique situations on a per area basis. So let's try to come up with a reasonable way forward, a reasonable supply mix that is fit for each area on the basis of the natural resources that are found in that area, the renewable energy resources that can be optimized for that area. There is a requirement to identify the eligible RE resources in those areas, setting of the annual minimum RE requirements that should be obtained from the or should be obtained or should be supplied to that area, and then the minimum incremental percentage that needs to be sold by the mandated participants here, the NPC SPUG, their successors in interest like the NPPs, and DUs with respect to those DUs that have embedded generation facilities in their area. Next slide, please. So that's actually one of the main differences with the on-grid rules. In the on-grid rules, the mandated participants or the on-grid program, the mandated participants are primarily the utilities. In the off-grid, it's the generators primarily that have the obligation. The rules also set out, or the guidelines also set out, the minimum requirements for the technical feasibility and stability of small grids, because we don't want the increase in share of RE to be compromising the stability of the grids. We want the grids, of course, to be stable, but that's why there's also that allowance for a flexible generation component for RE and all the utilities or the generation facilities that will be used in that area. The rules also set out the dispatch for RE resources in order to meet the annual minimum requirement. So I think maybe I failed to mention earlier, the DOE Charter, it's worth mentioning, already has this preferential bias for renewable resources. So the implementation, the operationalization of that preferential bias can actually come from the dispatch of the RE resources. Once they're available, they need to be utilized. The rules also set out the procurement of mandated participants, by mandated participants, of the minimum RE requirement in their respective areas. Maybe worth underscoring here, the approach is on a per area basis. Why? Because it's, again, a recognition that each area may have their own unique situation or unique set of resources. And what we want is an optimization of those resources in the area. It also provides, the rules also provide for the means of compliance by mandated participants of that minimum percentage. And this is where I think I talked about briefly earlier the penalties. This is where the penalties will come in. There are means available for you to comply. If there is failure to comply, then there may be consequences for that failure to comply with the rules. But of course, we start out with this exercise. We make sure that everyone or all the areas, all the mandated participants have been provided with the capability tools that will make them, allow them to meet their compliance requirements. Next slide, please. Okay. So what is this optimal supply mix about? I think it's also worth mentioning that while the compliance to RPS is imposed on the mandated participants, the obligation to meet the optimal supply mix is actually a village effort. It takes a village, they said, to raise a child. It also takes a village to come up with and comply or contribute to that optimal supply mix. So while all the mandated participants are required to contribute to that supply mix, and the mandated participants are generally the generation companies, there is also an obligation on the DUs, on the utilities in the area, to include the required generation in all their DDPs. So in the DDPs, in the distribution development plans that will be submitted by the DUs on an annual basis, they need to already take note of the optimal supply mix. So it really is a collective effort, a collaboration of all the stakeholders on a per area basis in order for us to optimize all the resources. The rules, as I mentioned earlier, also set out the setting of the minimum RE percentage. That is actually a combination of all the generation facilities already existing coming from RE resources, the adoption of hybrid or distributed RE generation systems, if these are feasible in your area, the stable operation of existing generating units. And as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to compromise the reliability or the stability of the grid as new entrants come in, as new RE generation facilities come in. And the capacity that corresponds to above or to exceed the minimum RE generation, so that we make sure that there's optimal penetration of RE in the respective grids that we have. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, on an annual basis, we will need to have the minimum percentage. The minimum per year may increase over time. So that's going to be also reviewed and set out by the RPS composite team. And that's don't worry, because that review is always based on what's happening on ground. That's why reporting is very crucial. The setting by the composite team of the annual increases will be disconnected from what's happening in reality if the reporting is not going to be current, if the reporting is not going to be transparent. We rely on you, we rely on the data that you have, we rely on the information that you have in setting out this annual incremental percentage. So as much as it is, as much as realizing the optimal supply mix is a collaboration, a collective effort of all stakeholders in the area, the setting of this annual incremental percentage is also a collaboration between the RPS composite team and all the mandated participants, and also all the DUs, even if they are not mandated participants. It takes the collaboration of the national and the local stakeholders in setting out these requirements. Next slide, please. Okay. Finally, who are the mandated participants? I think I mentioned this already earlier. The generation companies, including NPC SPUG, the new power providers and the qualified third parties, and DUs or local governments in respect of the LGU operated electric systems, and DUs with respect to, and even the LGU operated systems if they have embedded generation facilities. So the requirement to meet the minimum percentage of RE are imposed on these entities. And that's why I think we are all here with you, because we want to understand, you need to also know paano ba makaka-comply? Ano ba tong bagong obligasyon na nilalagay sa amin at paano namin mako-comply ito? Okay? So, yun lang po I think at this point. Maybe to close out and to wish you all a good exercise for today and tomorrow. Maybe while we are talking about rules and how to comply, let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture really is that let's find what the optimal supply mix is for each area. And because this is going to be your vision of your energy future for your respective area. So I wish you all a good, again, a good exercise, and let's all make use of the experts while they are here with us, and pick their brains and learn as much as we can, from them given this opportunity. Salamat po at magandang hapon po ulit.
Thank you, Attorney Mona. In fact, everyone, the last mission of ASEP was together with Attorney Mona. We went to this far-flung community in Little Baguio, in Davao. So it was like 16 hours to and from travel, but Attorney Mona was really great, and she was very energized to see the communities there benefiting from the productive uses of renewable energy. And definitely, kung hindi po ganito yung sitwasyon, she would have gone to Davao and or wherever else. And also, she's actually really one of the female leaders of renewable energy in the country, together with Director Mylene Kapungkol, the Director of the Renewable Energy Management Bureau, who is currently with us right now. Director Mylene, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone. How are you? Good
Hello, Attorney
afternoon.
Mylene. Hello, Director Mylene. Thank you for being with
Thank
us
you.
today despite your very, very busy schedule. Okay, so let's go back to Attorney Mona. I know we know that she's very, very busy at the moment, but we got some questions. And okay, let me just make them short for you. So, although we've seen it in your slide, can you maybe elaborate who is responsible, who is really bound to comply with the RPS compliance? And if in case there is somebody that needs to be penalized, as you mentioned earlier, who will that be?
Okay, so the obligation, according to the rules, and which is actually just an implementation of the RE, of the provisions in the RE Act, the obligation is imposed on the mandated participants for off-grid areas. And as I mentioned earlier, unlike in the on-grid areas where the mandated participants are identified to be the distribution utilities, the RE suppliers, and the GenCos, only if they have a direct connect customer. In the off-grid area, the mandated, second to the last slide, that one. So the mandated participants in the off-grid areas are really the generation companies, including, as stated in the law, NPC SPUG and its successors in interest. So successors in interest interpreted to mean that because NPC also is undertaking privatization of the off-grid services. So those who succeed NPC are the new power providers, those that supply only the generation component, or the QTPs, the qualified third parties, those who really take over the SPUG function, including the wires and the generation or the supply portion in certain areas. The DUs in the off-grid areas become mandated participants only in respect of their embedded generation facilities. So if they have their own embedded generation facilities, then they have their own RPS requirements also. So these are the mandated participants. When we talk about penalties, the mandated participants are the ones that are required to comply, so they are the ones that may be penalized if they fail to comply. But again, the objective of this exercise is hopefully no one will get to that point, because we will all find what is optimal for our area, and then our requirements will be suitably set on a per area basis, so that the risk of non-compliance will be minimal, if none at all.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mana. And we have one last question on demand. I'm not sure if this is actually really addressed to you, but they would like to address this to you, if I can say that. So the question is, um, how do you define RE share, and what if the generation capacities of other entities are already used up?
Yeah. Kraus, you are absolutely correct. Maybe that's not for me to respond to, but the RPS composite team. But maybe what I can say is that the DOE and the RPS composite team, also based on the recommendations of NREB pursuant to the RE Act, will not set the levels, will not set the capacity requirements or the volume requirements unreasonably or without basis. And the basis will have to be the optimal supply mix. So babalik po tayo doon, babalik at babalik tayo doon. Kung hindi pa natin nakikita yung optimal supply mix, mahirap din naman pong mag-set ng one number, because a single number may not apply to all areas, as I mentioned earlier. But we can't properly design also the requirements until we get to see the optimal supply mix that this exercise will result in. This exercise that have been happening for the past few weeks. Yun po, yun yung magiging basihan po natin. Sana nasagot ko. Siguro po kung hindi, mamaya tanungin natin yung baka masagot ni Jojo mamaya pag nag-present siya.
Yes, actually, thank you so much, Attorney Mana, for setting the mood. Thank you as well for that statement. So it really gives the meaning to why we are doing this at the moment. Okay, so there you have it, everyone. If you have additional questions, please write it in the chat box. We'll send it as an email to Attorney Mana, and we'll send it all to you. Now, we'd like to see who are here in this forum, and we'd like to take a group picture with everyone. Okay, so please feel free to turn on your cameras, and Andrea will take our group pictures. Andrea, please take it away.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. So please turn on your camera for a group photo, and we will post it maybe on some of the posting in the media of ASEP and DOE page. Okay, I can please Mr. Zan Perez and Engineer Hilon, please turn on your camera. Okay, ready? Okay, smile. Thank you very much. You might now turn it off.
Salamat po. It's very nice to see everyone smiling, and everyone's in a good mood for this wonderful training until tomorrow. All right. Again, thank you so much, Attorney Mona. Now let's call on the Senior Science Research Specialist of the DOE and the Technical Services Management Division, Mr. Jonathan Chidosha, to give us a presentation of the RPS form.
Thank you, Cross. Good afternoon po, everyone. To our principals, ASECRED, Attorney Mona, and our director and our division chief, and to our RLI experts, good afternoon po, and to our participants. So on behalf of the DOE, I'll be sharing. Cross, if I may be allowed to share my screen.
Yes, please.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of the DOE, I'll be sharing the RPS requirement and compliance form. I'll be covering the following legal provisions on the RPS form, the overview of the major sections of the RPS form. I will identify potential case scenarios, and then lastly, based on the presented potential case scenario, we'd like to provide some analysis and takeaway for the participants. In section 17 of the RPS of grid rules, it says about the role of the NREB TSMD. So if you have any queries or concerns regarding your requirements or your compliance, please address all of them to our director, Maylin Sikapongkol, and our division chief, Gaspar G. Escobar Jr. So we shall be very happy to accommodate you and assist you. You can reach us via phone and, of course, via email. Reportorial requirements. So in connection to that, we have been communicating with you regarding your reportorial requirements, some of which are the PSA, Power Supply Agreements, the RPS Compliance Plan, purchase details, or other pertinent data sets that may be required by the DOE and the NREB. So we have been coordinating with you, inviting you sa ECs po through the NEA and the SPAG. And for our developers, we have been coordinating with you, and we will be continuing to seek you these reportorial requirements. So to gather these data sets, we need a form. So we were able to come up with this Renewable Portfolio Standards Requirements and Compliance Form, or what we call as the RPS form. So last year, in July, our RPS City, chaired by Assistant Secretary Redentor De Lola, and the members approved to use this form to be used in the establishment of database. So the users of the form is intended for both on-grid and off-grid areas. So in the case of on-grid participants, we were able to conduct a series of training workshops using the RPS form. We were also scheduled supposedly to do that for the off-grid participants, but because of the pandemic, it was deferred. And so we resolved still to communicate with you virtually. But the focus of this training workshop is not on the RPS form, it's for the SPT. So like what ASEC said a while ago and Attorney Mona, let's maximize this time to ask questions and inquire from our RLI experts. So the purpose of the RPS form is to aid the participants in their planning and development of their implementation in reference to the RPS compliance. So this RPS form is an annual mandatory requirement for the mandated participants. Before I go to the next slide, as you're all aware, the DOE issued an advisory that compliance year 1 for RPS on-grid rules remains 2020, while compliance year 1 for the RPS off-grid rules is suspended until further notice. So these are the major sections of the RPS form. The first is the general information. So participants are required to indicate their names, classification, the location of their business address in full for a communication and follow-up of their submissions, and the focal person, usually the general manager or the president of the company. Then please indicate the working email where we can reach you. You can see in the item number 5, percentage of RE share, When the user indicates that it is in off-grid area, it is automatically set to 0, um, K sub 0. The second section is what we call the RPS requirement. So it says about the total electricity generation or net electricity sales of the participants, the annual incremental RE percentage or K sub M, initially set at 1%, then it will increase at an increment of 1% set by our RPS city, but it can be increased depending on their assessment. And then item number 8 is the calculated RPS requirement. So here we can see the annual incremental RE percent is only the minimum based on the RPS of grid rules. The next major section of the form is the compliance mechanism. After showing the requirement, it will also show the possible sources of RE certificates per mandated participant. You can see that there are gray areas because it is an off-grid participant. So these gray areas does not apply to this user. So there will be no net metering, no RE for own use, no GEO, and no fit allocation for off-grid participants. So it will leave two major sources of RPS compliance, which are the RECs generated from PSAs or eligible power plants under PSA, and purchase from the RE market. So once the compliance year one for the RPS off-grid rules is implemented by the DOE, even though there is no viable plant in the area, the RPS rule says that the participant is still obliged to comply by procurement of RE certificates in the RE market. So while compliance year one is not yet set, the participants are required to start their planning for their procurement of RE. Another major section of the form is the RPS REC account. All participants are mandatory to register in the RE market. So each participant shall have an account, REC account. Among the parameters that shall be found there are the numbers of RECs issued, numbers of REC transferred, RECs sold in the market, RECs surrendered in the RE registrar, RECs retired on an annual basis, numbers of RECs that expired after 3 years of validity, the beginning balance per year, the ending balance per year, and then the corresponding shortfall. Finally, the RPS form also provides simulation or chart of its requirement versus the compliance. In the screen, it shows the blue line is the RPS requirement. So it is gradually increasing with 1% K sub M annual increment, and the compliance is 0 for this case. That's the blue, red column bars. So it shows that the participant is not compliant when compliance year one is set in 2020. Now, I'll proceed with the case scenarios in consideration of the following provisions in the RPS rules. First, in section 7, it says that although the RPS form provides the minimum annual RPS requirement at 1%, it must be consistent with the optimal supply mix, as was stressed by Attorney Mona in her presentation. So even if the rules say that your minimum is 1%, it must be consistent with the results of the optimal supply mix per area, meaning it can increase depending on the result of the optimal supply mix. The second consideration is section 8, saying that RE generation after year 0 or 2018 based on the rules must not be lower than 1%. So the base year, the baseline for the calculation of the minimum RPS requirement is in 2018, then the RE share minimum is not lower than 1% in compliance year one. Section 8C, so the Department of Energy in collaboration with the NEA, we shall assist the participants in their compliance plan. So we have conducted these virtual training workshop activities using the SPT in order to facilitate assistance to our participants in planning their compliance with their respective RPS requirements. So we do not limit your RPS compliance plan using the SPT only. The rules say that you can also use other internationally accepted optimization software. So based on these considerations, we were able to identify at least 3 potential case scenarios. Case 1 is that the participant has 0 RE generation. So without RE generation, that's the case 1. For case 2, there is RE generation but is not eligible for RPS compliance. And case 3, there is now eligible RE generation for RPS compliance. We will look into each of the potential case scenarios in the next slides. In case 1, there is 0 RE generation. So in all of these scenarios, we use same parameters so we can compare the results. We use the same baseline year, 2018 sales, and the annual growth rate for the planning period 2020 to 2029. We use the 10-year planning period so that it can be consistent with the planning projections stated in the DDPs of the participants. So we set it at 4% AAGR. We can see that there is no generation from RE, and then the resulting RPS requirement for year 2020 is 540 megawatt hour. If we try to simulate the required number of certificates for the planning period, it will be around 37,801 RECs. And the shortfall, because there is no eligible RE facility, falls in compliance year 1 of 2020. And the same volume of requirements is the same with the shortfall at 37,801. In this case 1, the RE share is forecasted minimum to increase from 1% in 2018 to 10% in 2029. Moving to case 2, we have now an RE generation coming from non-eligible RE power plant in an off-grid area at 2,000 megawatt hour. The resulting requirement, RPS requirement, is bigger, 2,704 megawatt hour. So also the resulting RPS requirement for the 10-year planning period is 63,773 RECs. And the same thing with the case 1, the shortfall year is on the compliance year 1 because there is no eligible RE facility. So the volume of REC shortfall is 63,773. But interestingly, the RE share is forecasted to increase from 5% in 2018 to 14% in 2029 because of the generation from RE facility which is not eligible for RPS compliance. And for case 3, we have now generation from an eligible RE facility at 5,000 megawatt hour. The RPS requirement has increased to 8,112 for year 2020, and the same with the RPS requirement for the planning period at 128,701. But if you will notice, the shortfall falls on a later year, which is in 2022. And the volume of REC shortfall is lower than the volume of the RPS requirement for the planning period, which is 78,701. And most of all, the share of RE is forecasted to increase from 15% in 2018 to 24% in 2029. And this is only minimum. So we have only used the parameters on a minimum basis, K sub M, 1% per annual. We have not yet considered the results of the optimal supply mix per area. In summary, we can see that the most advantageous for the participant is in case 3 because the REC shortfall falls in 2022. And so last slide will provide some analysis and takeaway based only on the presented potential case scenarios. So as we have emphasized earlier in the presentations by Attorney Mona and Secret, the compliance plan per area is on a case-to-case basis. So our analysis and takeaway are only based on the presented potential case scenarios. First bullet, all data resulting from the RPS form serves as critical and initial input and are supplemental to the results of the SPT. So now, please understand that yes, you have to build plants in your area, but the RPS form must not be the sole basis when you put up a plant. So it is critical, but it is only initial and must be used in supplemental to the results of the SPT. So the RPS form goes hand in hand with the SPT form because the RPS form shows the minimum while the SPT shows the optimal supply mix per area. Second bullet, the minimum annual RPS requirement for the period must be taken in consideration. So as we have seen, we tried to show the whole RPS requirement for the planning period and not just on a per year basis because that will be more strategic for the participant because a plant takes time to put up. So might as well consider the requirements for the planning period or for the duration of the entire plan. Third bullet, procurement of RA requirement or conduct of CSP must be timely facilitated in order to avoid applicable penalties and or exposure to the RA market. So just the same with the second bullet, if the planning is not sufficient to cover the requirements for the planning period, the tendency is for the participant to purchase its RE certificates from the RE market, which cannot be charged to the customers. Finally, last bullet, securing of PSA with eligible RE power plant will provide the the needed power requirements in the off-grid area while at the same time satisfy RPS requirements. So it based on the results, the most advantageous scenario for a participant is to secure a PSA with an eligible RE power plant. By doing that, the requirements in the area is satisfied, while at the same time the compliance with the RPS. So thank you po everyone.
Thank you, Sir Jojo, for the elaboration on the RPS form. Definitely, lahat ng participants natin will be able to input those information needed. So for the questions, maybe, okay, so please feel free, everyone, to write your questions or comments in the chat box. But there was a question from Mr. Nobleza of the University of the Philippines, Las Bañas. His question was, may I inquire on how is it defined or how is the optimal supply mix defined? So this was answered by Director Mylene for everyone. Director Mylene's answer was, hi, Mr. Nobleza, the optimal supply mix will be defined in the Missionary Electrification Development Plan, but each mandated participants will have their own respective optimal supply mix where blending the RE supply in the current supply mix to efficient supply for the franchise area. In some cases, the RE requirements in energy unit will be higher than 1%, can go as high as 30% or even more. Uh, Thanks. So, Sir Jojo, that was the response of Director Mylene. So, if you would like to add anything to that.
I think the response of Director Mylene is okay.
Of course, coming from her directly. Thank you, Director Mylene. And so if I will pass to you the question that was asked to Attorney Mona earlier regarding the RE share. So what is the definition, maybe in simpler terms, of the RE share? Because we also welcomed some media participants as observers and some people from the LGU and university researchers such as UP. So please define what is the RE share and what if the generation capacities of other entities are used up?
The RE share is in terms of energy. So for example, the generation based on the RPS rules, the baseline is 2018 or year zero. The actual generation is 100,000 megawatt hour. So the RE share should not be lower than the 1%. So by in 2020, if that's the start of the compliance year one, if previously the participant sources its supply from conventional fuel or diesel, so all of the 100,000 megawatt hour is provided using diesel plants. Because of the RPS rules, 10% must be sourced from an RE facility. So by that, the 10%, which is around 10,000 megawatt hours, must be generated by an RE power plant. So the remaining 90,000 may be taken from the diesel power plants. But again, that should be inconsistent with the results of the optimal supply mix per area.
All right. So I think that answers it. So any other question? Do you have any other question herein? Okay, so if you don't have any question at the moment, don't worry. You can just ask your questions in the chat box, and definitely Sir Jojo will be more than happy to provide you answers. Thank you, Sir Jojo, for your presentation and your answers to the questions. Thank you, everyone. And now, to give us the overview and updates on the PREMS, we have Mr. Clares Lauren Halocon. He is the head corporate planning and communications of the PEMC, of the Philippine Energy Market Corporation.
Unfortunately, everyone, Sir Clares cannot join us today, but he would like to give his regards. We will going to play a video of the Philippine Renewable Energy Market System, wherein the trading of the RECs or the RE certificates will take place, and the registration of the RPS mandated participants and all the market players. And he would like to say that please feel free to chat the questions regarding the PREMS, and the RE registrar will respond afterwards. So I am going to share screen for the video.
Well, let me help you in understanding what this new market is all about. Pursuant to the Renewable Energy Act, the renewable energy market is established to serve as the venue for the buying and Hi there. Have you heard about the Philippine renewable energy market, and you basically have no idea about it? Well, let me help you in understanding what this new market is all about. Pursuant to the Renewable Energy Act, the renewable energy market is established to serve as the venue for the buying and selling of renewable energy certificates or REC, so that mandated participants can comply with their annual Renewable Portfolio Standards or RPS. Their compliance can be demonstrated by retiring the number of RECs that are required for a particular compliance period. So, what are the objectives of the renewable energy market? Firstly, the market can take into account all actual renewable energy generation from eligible renewable energy generation capacities, and correspondingly, issue the renewable energy certificates to the assigned mandated participant. Secondly, we can centrally monitor the compliance of mandated participants to their renewable portfolio standard requirement, and be able to assess how far or near are we in achieving our targets in the renewable energy law. Third, the market will provide and ensure a level playing field for all renewable energy participants. And, finally, the market will serve as a venue to have a competitive, efficient, and transparent market for the trading of renewable energy certificates. So, how will the establishment of the renewable energy market benefit the Filipino people? The market will promote the use of renewable energy resources, which in the long run more affordable and can be helpful for the mitigation of greenhouse and global warming effect. Also, by the proper usage of the renewable energy system, social and economic benefits such as local employment, better health, improvement of life standard, and community development can be achieved. So, how does this market work? The main commodity of the renewable energy market is the renewable energy certificates or the REC. The REC represents the environmental attributes of the energy generated from eligible RE facilities such as solar, wind, geothermal, run-of-river, hydropower plants, biomass, impounding hydropower systems, and ocean. The REC will be issued for every 1 megawatt-hour of actual generation of these eligible resources. And, each megawatt-hour is equivalent to 1 REC. Each REC has a lifespan of 3 years, and it will expire after 3 years from the date it was issued. This REC will then be issued to the corresponding mandated participants for their RPS compliance based on the RPS rules issued by the Department of Energy. Meanwhile, the RPS stands for the Renewable Portfolio Standards. This is a market-based policy mechanism under the RE Act, which requires load-serving entities to source an agreed portion of their energy supply, or energy that they source for their end users, from eligible RE facilities. The RPS aims to attain the Philippines' target of 35% in the RE generation mix expressed in megawatt-hour by the year 2030. Based on the RPS rules for on-grid areas issued by the DOE, the minimum annual increment required is initially set at 1% per annum. Note that this may be adjusted, subject to the assessment of the DOE and the National Renewable Energy Board or REMB. Now, who are the expected members of the RE market? Pursuant to the RE market rules, the membership in the market is categorized into two. These are the RE market trading participants and data providers. The RE market trading participants have two subcategories. First are the RPS mandated participants who are obliged to comply with the RPS requirements in on-grid and off-grid systems. And second are the eligible RE generators in on-grid and off-grid systems. For on-grid system, the mandated participants refers to the on-grid distribution utilities, serving captive customers, including privately owned, electric cooperative, LGU-owned and controlled, and economic zone utilities. Meanwhile, the following entities connected to off-grid systems shall register as off-grid mandated participants. NPC SPAG and NPPS or QTPS is defined in the RPS for off-grid areas. Off-grid distribution utilities with respect to their own generation facilities. Entities that generate electricity and serve off-grid areas, as may be determined and approved by the DOE, and entities that meet the requirements set forth in relevant legislation pertaining to the application of a Renewable Portfolio Standards instrument in off-grid systems. Also required to register as mandated participants are the suppliers of electricity for the contestable market, as defined in the APIRA and pursuant to retail competition and open access RCOA. And generation companies who serve directly connected customers registered in OESA. Please note that the registration of RPS mandated participants in the RE market is mandatory. Also, since the compliance year 1 for off-grid mandated participants is suspended until further notice by the DOE, the registration of mandated participants in off-grid systems is yet to start. The next category of REM trading participants is the RPS eligible generators, which can either be mandatory RE market generators or voluntary RE market generators. The RPS eligible generators are those facilities that came into commercial operations after the passing of the RE Act or from 2009 onwards. The mandatory RE market generators are classified as follows: generation companies owning eligible RE facilities that generate electricity into the WESM pool. Embedded eligible RE facilities that are members of the WESM hybrid system or dual-fired generator provided that the facility has been in commercial operation starting 2009. Meanwhile, the voluntary RE market generators include the following: net metered RE generation facilities, embedded non-WESM RE generators, end users with RE generation facilities for their own use, and RE generation facilities accredited under the Green Energy Option Program. The voluntary RE market generator facilities shall be registered by their host distribution utilities. Thus, the host EU shall assume the obligations under the REM rules and manuals of such registered voluntary REM generators. On the other hand, entities with RE generation facilities in off-grid systems shall register each of their facilities under the RE generator subcategory, off-grid RE generator. The last membership category in the REM are the data providers. These are the WESM operator or the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines, and the National Transmission Company or Transco. The WESM operator shall regularly provide the following data to the RE registrar: the metered quantity and bilateral contract quantity for the issuance of RECs corresponding to the generation of WESM RE generators. On the other hand, the Transco shall provide the following to the RE registrar: metered quantities pertaining to FIT-eligible facilities, data on FIT-all tariff remitted by mandated participants, and NGCP for directly connected customers to service basis in allocating FIT-RE generation to mandated participants. The operations of the RE market is rather simple. It has 4 main processes, which include the following. First is the data collection. The RE registrar shall collect from data providers and host distribution utilities with registered voluntary generators all the data needed for the calculation and issuance of RECs. Once collected, the RE registrar shall then process the issuance of RECs in digital or electronic form based on actual generation from eligible RE facilities to the default REC owners. Then the next process is the REC trading. This process is actually optional on the part of a REM participant. The trading of RECs in the market will be done using the platform called the Philippine Renewable Energy Market System or the PROMS. In that system, there will be a bulletin board where participants who have excess RECs can post the number of RECs they have available for sale, and for those who have shortfall, the number of RECs they want to buy. The price of each REC shall be within the limit or and approved by the Energy Regulatory Commission. The negotiations between the selling and buying party will happen outside of the market. And, once they have agreed on the price and volume of RECs, they will trigger a transfer request of RECs from one party to another using the PROMS. The last process is the monitoring and compliance. All retired RECs will be considered as proof of compliance to the RPS requirements of mandated participants. The RE registrar shall monitor and report the compliance level of each mandated participant by submitting an annual report to the DOE. In terms of governance structure, the DOE shall establish and set the policies for the operations and enhancements of the RE market, and promulgate rules and manuals. The DOE is also empowered to impose administrative fines and penalties for any violation of the provisions of the RE Act, its IRR, and other related issuances. The ERC, on the other hand, shall approve the REC pricing methodology and set the price cap. It will also approve the market fees and the cost recovery mechanisms for the RPS compliance of mandated participants. The RE market will be administered and operated by the Renewable Energy Registrar or RER under the PEMC on a non-profit basis. The ultimate governance of the RE market is the responsibility of the PEM board. The majority of the governance functions will be carried out by the REMB Governance Committee or the RGC under the oversight of the PEM board. The RGC will also take the lead in the review, approval, and endorsement, through the PEM board, of proposed changes to rules and manuals to the DOE. The PEM board has appointed the RGC with members composed of an independent member from the PEM board, the RE registrar, and one representative each from the electric cooperative sector, private distribution utility sector, and RE generation and suppliers sector. The RGC will also have the authority to recommend to the PEM board the imposition of sanctions on RE market members if the breach of the RE market rules was proven through an investigation carried out by the Enforcement and Compliance Office or ECHO of PEMC. Like in the WESM, RE market participants shall also designate a RE market compliance officer, who shall be responsible in coordinating with the ECHO all matters relating to RE market enforcement and compliance. This includes the coordination for the provision of the necessary information and data be required by the RGC and/or by the ECHO. The other governance functions such as market audit and dispute resolution will be covered by the existing governance committees for the WESM. At this point, let me introduce you to the Philippine Renewable Energy Market Systems, or what we call for short as the PREMS. The PREMS is a web-based system that will run the functions of the RE registrar. Its features include the following: registration of the RE market trading participants, management of RE certificates, which includes the calculation, allocation, and issuance, bulletin board for the information on RE certificates for selling and buying, and RPS compliance and report management of mandated participants to the DOE. The PREMS is already configured to the market operator system, so that the transmittal of required data for the calculation and issuance of the RE certificate is automated. Meanwhile, access to the PREMS will be provided to the DOE, ERC and market participants. The RE registrar will provide digital certificate and login credentials to authorized market participants, so they can access and use the system. Only a maximum of 3 accounts, with unique username and email address per participant company is allowed. So you can be given access to the PREMS, you need to accomplish and submit the digital certificate installation request form to RE registrar. This is also one of the RE market registration application requirements. So, where are we now in the RE market preparations? Currently, the registration of expected participants in the RE market is ongoing. We encourage all expected participants to submit your registration documents. To know more about the requirements, you may visit our website www.wesm.ph/downloads for the list of registration requirements and other relevant information. The RE registrar has also conducted a series of online trainings on the fundamentals of the RE market. We will also schedule hands-on training for the use of the PREMS within the last quarter of 2020. We hope you learned something about the RE market today. For any questions and concerns on the RE market, feel free to contact the RE registrar through PEMC's Corporate Planning and Communications Department via email at our.registrar@wesm.ph. Thank you, and have a great day ahead.
That is all
Thank you.
for the video. Thank you very much. We will provide the link of the video for those who would like to replay it and to review the contents. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was the video from the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation. If you would like to get back to that, we'll share the video and the presentations to you after this webinar series. So if you have any question, even though we don't have Sir Claris right now, he is online with us. So if you have any questions, just input them in the chat box. We'll message him and he'll get back to us as soon as possible. But for now, let me go back to Sir Jojo. There's a question here from Mr. Noblaza. To Sir Jonathan, just a clarification. If the RE increment says 1% per year, is this in reference with the total generation of the previous year or just RE? Thank you.
Sir, that is in reference to the actual generation in 2018. So, in example that was cited a while ago, like the 2018 total generation, that is the sales less own use and less losses, is 100,000 megawatt hour. So in 2018, that's the actual net electricity sales. So for 2020, which is the compliance year 1%, not lower than 1%. So 1% of 10,000 is around. So let's say 100,000, so 10,000 is the 1% RE share minimum. But there is a projected increment in 2020. So the 100,000 generation in 2018 will now increase in 2020. So the 1% share that in 2020 is now in reference to the 2020 um, generation. So the minimum 1% RE share is based on the actual generation in 2018. That's it.
Thank you, Sir Jojo. And before we go to the deep diving discussions on the SPT3, maybe you can also answer this question. The question is, if the RPS provides the minimum and the SPT provides the optimal RE share, how do we use them together? I think this is in relation to how it's going to be used for the RPS compliance plan.
What's the question? Was there a question? Sorry.
Yes, Director Mylene. So if the RPS, if the RPS provides the minimum and the SPT will be able to provide the optimal RE supply, how do we use them both at the same time in the making of the RPS compliance plan?
I think what the law or what the policy require is to meet the optimal supply mix. It's not only the minimum, because when you achieve or attain optimal supply mix based on the simulation, there is greater savings in terms of fuel and universal charge reduction. Let's remember that for RPS off-grid, most of the power generators, NPPs, and even NPC, the generation rates are subsidized through the universal charge for missionary electrification. So the reference is we always refer to the optimal supply mix, not the minimum. I don't know if I understood the question, but between the minimum and the optimal, the policy prescribe optimal supply mix. So I guess that's what we have to comply with.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Director Mylene. I think that was clear. So the minimum is based on law. Is that correct, Director Mylene?
Yes, exactly. And actually, the 1%, you're correct, it's in the law. So we just adopted it as a minimum, just to provide a number for off-grid compliance of the RPS.
Yes. So if they would like to know what can be the optimal share for their particular area,
No,
then they
let
can
me
use
correct.
the
Sorry,
SPT.
Ms. Cross, let me correct.
Yes,
The
yes,
1%
please.
pertains to the on-grid RPS.
Mm-mm.
The off-grid RPS is actually the minimum generation in SPAG areas. So that's why we have two different mandated participants in both the on-grid RPS rules and in the off-grid RPS, because the sectioning is different na the basis, the legal basis. So in the RPS, for on-grid, it specify 1%. But in the minimum, minimum RE generation in the SPAG areas or missionary areas, it doesn't say, but since we are adopting the RPS policy of considering both are mandatory, then we adopted a number of a minimum of 1%.
Okay, thank you, Director Maylene. But
Yeah,
just a
sorry about
follow-up
that.
question. Director Maylene, for the off-grid, because you said that it doesn't really mention, but so since it is silent, then we follow it. Is there a possibility that it will be changed? Maybe on the past data?
That I think it will be changed on the minimum. It's just a minimum number. What
Yes.
the policy prescribed for the RPS off grid is the optimal supply mix. So it can go high as 1% because we all know that in spag areas mostly are served by a conventional diesel, which are 100% conventional. Others are with minimal or minor renewable energy. So with the aid of the simplified planning tool, or even if you are using Homer, that would reflect the the most uh, feasible or most advantageous supply mix to the distribution utility and the consumer.
Okay. Thank you, Director
So
Maylene.
1% is just a number. So
Yes. So we go for the optimum, the highest possible
yes,
percentage.
the optimal.
Yes. Thank you, Director Maylene.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
think that is very, very clear. Okay, so we have another question. Sir Jojo, RPS has incremental target per year on the minimum. Does it have a target as well in terms of RE share in generation per year?
Sir, as was discussed by Director Maylin, the 1% is the minimum. So the target per year is to have an optimal share of RE, and that's the assistance of the SPT. The SPT will guide us with its results. It will require input of the actual generating facility parameters, how much the cost of generating, providing power to the area. So with all these parameters, the SPT is designed to provide simulation results, how much RE share will lead to an optimal mix per year. So that's it.
Right. Thank you, Sir Jojo. It's really a nice afternoon. Everyone is so energetic and very interactive. All right. So now it's time to introduce our speakers, our experts from Germany, who are rural electrification experts and who are our trainers for the simplified planning tool 3.0. First, let me introduce you. Oh, sorry. First, we have to sign in. Let us know who are in this chat room, and we'd also like to know if you are a first timer to the SPT training. So please sign in with your complete name and the complete name of your organization. So just like me, I inputted my complete name and um, and the complete name of my organization. And if it's your first time to join the SPT training or the RPS training, please just add a description, first time. Okay, we're very happy to welcome you all here. And we have, okay, at least one person who's first, okay, two people to join us on this discussion about SPT and RPS. Now, three people, also from NPC as well. For five people, six people, seven people. So please do not be shy to ask your questions at any point in time during this training. Okay, again, for those who haven't signed in, please type your complete name and the name of your organization. Let me now introduce you to our expert trainers. For the expert trainers, please feel free to turn on your camera once your name is called. So our first trainer is Dr. Philip Blackinga. Philip is an international expert in island energy supply and rural electrification. He holds a PhD in engineering from the TU Berlin and studied previously business and engineering at the same university. In 2011, he joined Raina Lemoine Institute and he focused on the analysis of island energy systems by conducting his PhD project with title Barriers for Implementing Renewable Energies on Caribbean Islands. Additionally, he started to develop the off-grid systems research field, which he is currently presenting as team leader. Within the off-grid systems team, he leads projects on island energy supply and rural electrification. Apart from that, he continuously publishes and shares research results on conferences and in scientific journals, acting as reviewer and editor as well. During his fieldwork, he visited many Caribbean countries such as Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Trinidad and Tobago. In addition, he worked on the Cook Islands, our country, the Philippines, in Tanzania, and Nigeria. Everyone, Dr. Philip Blackinga.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Kraus, for this kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning from our side. So we're now on European winter time, so time difference is now 7 hours, so it's quite an early start for us, but it's always a pleasure to work with you in these regional trainings. And yeah, I'm looking forward to give this training together with my colleague, and can just encourage you that you make use of that. It's not only the trainers from EU-ASEP here, it's also the trainers from the DOE, and so you will have a wide range of experts who can support you in any questions when we start with the hands-on introduction to the SPT and when we do the exercises tomorrow.
Yes, thank you, Philip. Just for everyone to know, it's 7:40 in the morning in Germany right now, and it's definitely kind of cold. Thank you, Philip. Our second speaker, trainer, or expert is Mr. Tobias Ripa. Toby has been a researcher in the research unit of grid systems at RLI since September 2020 and supports the team in the planning and modeling of renewable off-grid energy systems and in project acquisition. Previously, he was a student assistant since November 2018. Toby holds a master's degree in process, energy, and environmental engineering from the Technical University Berlin and wrote his master's thesis with the title Technical and Economic Analysis of the Electrification of a Waste Collection Vehicle Fleet. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental resource management from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, Vienna. Everyone, Mr. Tobias Ripa.
Thank you, Kraus, for the introduction. And I just want to say that I'm happy to meet so many Philippine colleagues who are working in this important field. And I'm happy to dive with you later into the practical use of the SPT tool. So I'm looking forward.
Thank you, Toby. And our next and the third trainer expert is Dr. Paul Berthaud. Paul holds a master's degree in global change management, HNE, EBET Valde. Therefore, his particular interests and competencies are focused on transformation processes towards more sustainable energy supply systems. From 2011 to 2012, he gained experience in designing, monitoring, and implementing climate protection projects in emerging and developing countries while working for the German Environmental Authority and the private sector. Subsequently, Paul joined the operator systems of the RLI and on methodologies and simulations for assessing the potential for the hybridization of diesel-powered energy systems with renewable energy. By that, he was able to gain working experience in a number of sub-Saharan and Southeast Asian countries. Another important focus area of his work is the development and application of planning tools for rural electrification. Since 2017, he is working on his PhD focusing on sustainable energy supply on Philippine islands. He's a project manager and and he also does project work in the field of rural electrification and off-grid energy supply with renewable energies. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paul Berthaud. Dr. Philip, would you like to?
Yes, let me briefly speak on behalf of Paul, and we send his regards to everyone. He's currently on parental leave as he became a father just last week, so we are happy to give him this free time to enjoy the first days with his newborn daughter. And but I want to thank him in absence, as he was one of the lead developers of the SPT and also gave already many trainings in the Philippines, conducted his PhD on the topic of RE deployment on Philippine islands. So it's great to have him in the team and his expertise, and we will Toby and I will be sufficient to conduct this training. It is designed that we always can do it with 2 persons.
Yes, thank you, Philip. So, everyone of our experts are very much acquainted here in the Philippines. They've been here for years now, so don't worry if you have any other question or whatsoever. Just feel free to ask them away. Okay, so before we proceed with a full-blown discussion on the SPT3, we are going to have a short break, which we can also utilize for a Q&A. So the break or the Q&A will last for about 3 to 5 minutes, beginning now. Hello, Philip.
Yes.
Okay, so I think instead of going on a break, others have chosen to ask some introductory questions, maybe. So they would like to know, because they've been mentioning RLI and ASEP at the same time, would you like to say something about RLI and ASEP?
Of course, yeah. My know ASEP is a technical assistance designed by the EU to support DOE and other stakeholders in the Philippines on the increase of the use of renewable energy and increase of energy access. And for this TA, a consortium has been formed of 3 entities, GIZ, ICF, and RLI. And the 3 of us are the implementing partners of this technical assistance. And RLI stands for Rainer Lemon Institute. We are a not-for-profit research institute based in Berlin, Germany. And we have this division called, or research unit called Off-Grid Systems. And here we work on broadly on SDG 7, so to the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, to provide clean and affordable energy access to all. And how we do this is that we support decision-making and planning in the field of new electrification and hybridization. And we do this in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. And personally, I would say like Philippines are our preferred partner country because we can apply all our methods and knowledge in terms of real island systems, geographical islands. We all know that we have more than 7,000 islands, so there's a lot of work to do, but also on missionary electrification in areas such as Mindanao. And we are committed strongly to like open access and open source tool development. So an example is this SPT, Simplified Planning Tool, is without any license. It's available to everyone for free. And this is as we believe that knowledge should be shared and should not be created just for profit making. And we also have an academic collaboration with the UP Diliman in Manila. So we also had already joint research projects. So we have some ties to the Philippines and really happy to be part of the EU-ASEP TA. And if you, from whatever background you're coming, if you're interested to learn more about the Institute, about what we're doing, and maybe even plan to come to Germany in a near future when traveling is possible again. So please just contact us and we can also provide you with more information on what we are doing, or if you look for from the private sector for certain partners, or if you look for academic or consulting collaborations, we are very open for this. And I also post a link to our webpage here. So if you want to use the last few minutes of this break, you can also just visit our webpage and explore some of our projects and also the members of the Institute on your own.
Yes, thank you, Philip. And I think we can only accommodate one more question. Before we deep dive into the technical stuff, there's a question here. So it's been noticed that in the beginning, if you mentioned that the trainers are doctors and speakers from Germany, they expect maybe more maturely aged people, but they're surprised that our experts are actually more of in the younger generation, and they would like to know what has been your inspiration in developing this tool? What was in your mind? What was in your heart maybe when you developed this tool?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for a compliment. So I also still consider myself young. Maybe my passport says something different, but I might take it as a compliment here. And what is the inspiration? I think we believe that providing a tool for planning is really goes beyond the, let's say, standard knowledge sharing of providing studies or providing results of simulations to give a one-time view on a certain situation. And this was really, the inspiration was people in our first like inception mission and later on in our first missions to the Philippines, we exchanged with DOE and always main question was, what is the optimal RE share? What should we state in the RPS rules? And then we always say, yeah, it depends. It depends like on the diesel fuel price. It depends on the load profile, depends on the size of the island. And so there is not this one magical number. And so this inspired us to provide a tool instead of a study, which can be used by everyone according to the local situation to understand what could be your optimal RE share. And I think this is something we're even a bit proud of, that this development has been has come so far that we now in version 3.0 and we have the regional trainings with more than 100 participants. This is, I think, also a great success for the TA, for RLI, but especially for it shows the great exchange we have with our Philippine partners, that we are driven by the feedback and by the needs you stated. And maybe you can even maybe add this to the press release, that I also wanted to write you on that the specifics or the special characteristic of this capacity development is not just to share the knowledge on hybridization, but really to share a tool which enables everyone to do his or her own simulations for the specific cases.
Thank you. Definitely, we already have that. Thank you so much, Philip. And what about Toby? Would you like to add anything?
No, I think Philip mentioned the most important things. For me, it was super interesting to come as a student into this topic, and previously as a student, I helped to further develop the tool. And this was also for me a very interesting point, because it broadened this dimension of renewable energy transition. So until now, I was more aware of the developments in Europe, but now I also have this perspective on, for example, Asian countries like the Philippines, and this is definitely also, I'm very happy for this experience. And yeah, that's all.
Right. Thank you, Toby. So thank you, Dr. Philip and Toby, for your heartfelt responses. And now, to provide us an overview of the purpose of the Simplified Planning Tool SPT3, we would like to call in again Dr. Philip Bleckinger.
Yes, thank you, Kraus. And again, good afternoon to everyone. I think we are a bit behind the schedule, but the experience of the last trainings has shown that we usually catch up on this latest tomorrow afternoon. So no worries about that. And I can just underline that the most important thing is that we are able to address all the questions you have. And I just want to encourage you that for this training, you have the advantage that we have a bit of a smaller group. So it's even more specifically designed for you. So feel free anytime to use the chat or to raise your hand to state a question if you have, or to comment or to share your own experiences. And tomorrow we will do this in a group work where it's even more vivid and more engaging. And for now, to start the session, I also would like to ask you some questions. For this, we have an online survey tool, and I would kindly ask you to go to the web page called menti.com. I just write this here in the chat. you can either use your browser on your computer, or you go you use your smartphone for this, your mobile device. So please go to menti.com and then you enter the code 4450164. And once you're logged in, so you go to menti.com, please, and then you use the code 4450164. You see already one person logged in. You can send some hearts or like cats or thumbs up. So feel free to choose whatever you like. So you give it a little bit more time. So please go to menti.com. And if you have any technical issues, so you need to open your browser, just write into the chat. We see now like more people joining. So we use this tool later today and tomorrow as well. So please don't hesitate to log in. Go to menti.com and use the code 4450164. Okay, so let me proceed with the first question. You can still log in. So menti.com 4450164. And the first question is, how is your Zoom connection? So if you can hear well and if you could see the presentations well, then it's rather good. If you have connection issues, would be rather bad, but it looks like it's rather good. And I think this is important. I mean, we used to do now virtual trainings in 2020, but still we always need to test if there are some technical issues which could prevent good user experience. Okay, but I think here we're on a good way. So it's there are no bad connections stated, so I'm happy about this. And the next is about your work experience in years. So first, in the energy sector in general, like how many years do you work already in the energy sector? How many years you work with renewable energy and how many years with hybridization? So maybe counting a bit and then can state it. And we see that what is quite interesting that yeah, now we see that of the experience in the energy sector is on average, or the work experience in average 3.5 years. And then, and we have one long-term expert staying more than 20 years. That's good. So this person is also welcome to comment on any issues we have here. But for renewable energy, we find less work experience, because this is just based on the fact that the standard supply is diesel power on the islands, and it's clear that when you started 20 years ago, that renewable energy was not such a hot topic, but it's changing now. But still, you see a difference in hybridization as a topic is very new, and that's why we also focus in this training on the basics of hybridization and how the tool can help you understanding this, because we are well aware that looking just at these numbers, it is a new topic, and that's why this capacity development is designed to increase your experience with hybridization. And now I would like to know from your perspective, if you evaluate energy supply systems. How important is security of supply, reliability? How important is cost competitiveness, the cost of the systems, and how important is environmental friendliness, the ecology? So, for example, emissions and one stated that nothing is important, so this might be maybe a mistake in using the survey, and now we see that it's equally distributed. So reliability is a bit more important than costs at the moment. Let's see how it evolves. So give us your answers. It is anonymous, so no worries. You can state just as you think. So let's just take this as an opportunity that we see already. We have 3 dimensions for planning and energy supply systems, and they might conflict. So reliability, so the most reliable system might be more expensive than another system. And so you always need to balance among these tasks. And we see that there's not one task significantly more important than the other. So we always need to check in planning that we identify a system which meets most of these criteria. And our e-share could be under environmental friendliness, but maybe in 100% our e-share is more expensive than 30%. So that's why it always needs to be assessed on an individual basis. And now, if you think about hybridization, which means introducing renewables into a diesel system, what would be your main motivation of these 3? Is it that you want to reduce the costs, or you want to reduce the emissions, or you want to increase the quality of supply? What would be your main motivation of hybridization? So all 3 is the first person stating, which makes sense. So you can achieve all 3. Now we see a slight tendency that reducing costs is the main driver. And this is also something we observe in many countries and regions in the world, that basically renewables, you introduce now renewables to reduce your costs, while it started to reduce emissions. And now we have a different game here. The cost of PV significantly decreased, cost of battery storage have decreased. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining this survey. So I think this was kind of a nice start to get your perspectives. And now I will start with the presentation. As I said, we will start with a recap on the basics of hybridization, and from there I will also give an little intro to the justification or the reasons why we introduced or started to develop the simplified planning tool. And as I said, we're a bit behind the schedule, so I might rush through it, but if I'm too fast, or if there's some slide you want to comment or you want to ask a question, just state the question in the chat and I will immediately try to answer it, or we answer it after the presentation. So the first is why hybridization. This is what we just discussed in the online survey. It is about reducing diesel fuel consumption, which could lead to reducing emissions, or will lead to reducing emissions, but could also lead to reducing power generation costs and you can increase the quality of supply. You might extend your service hours while hybridizing your system, but also make it more stable if you add battery storage. And how is a hybrid system defined? So when we say, okay, I want to hybridize, what does it even mean? Hybrid is a term which states that there's two of a kind. So an example you might know is an hybrid car. So in a hybrid car, you have an combustion engine and an electrical. So you combine two engine types. And in a hybrid mini-grid or island supply systems, you have at least two different kinds of technologies for power generation. So if it's a diesel-only system, it's not a hybrid system, but an diesel PV is a hybrid system. Diesel wind is a hybrid system. Also, for example, hydro and PV could be a hybrid system. And then it is often combined with battery storage. So this about the definitions. And as I said, I will be rather quick, or try to be rather quick in the presentation. You can also download it from the cloud later on. And we also have an explanatory video later on. But yeah, as I said, right now you have the advantage to ask direct questions if needed. So let me briefly go through the technologies we have in typical hybrid systems. And there is the diesel generator, which I think you're mainly familiar with. So fuel is burned in a combustion engine, transformed to kinetic energy, and then in the generator transformed to electricity. And two specific characteristics. We have usually an efficiency curve, which leads to lower efficiencies at lower loads of the generator. So I usually try to run it in high loads and constantly. And the main cost driver is the fuel costs. So for every kilowatt hour, you need a certain amount of fuel. And you have also emissions related to the fuel. And in comparison to that, we have a solar PV system where the fuel is basically for free. It's the solar irradiance. Of course, you have higher investments costs into the system. The physics behind it is that the irradiance causes a photoelectric effect in the PV cells, which lead to a current. And this current can be used in an inverter to be transformed from direct current to alternating current, and then you feed it into your grid. And another renewable source is a wind power system. So here this is that you use the kinetic energy from the fuel is wind, which is basically an airflow, and the energy, the kinetic energy, depends on the size of your wind turbine, which is the area covered by the blades, the density factor of the air. So if it's more humid, it's a bit more dense, and then the most important factor is the wind speed, which is in the third order of magnitude, influences the power output. So the example is if the wind speed doubles, it's 8 times the power output. It's 8 times higher. So this is quite a massive influence, and that's why it's so important to find suitable locations for using wind farms. And we will also see in the exercises how wind speed influences the feasibility of hybrid systems. And another renewable source is hydropower. So here the fuel is the water flow, and the physics behind it are potential energy. So it's about mass, the gravitational factor, and height. So the most important thing is what is the height level between the headwater, the height difference between the headwater level and the tailwater level. And like in a more mountainous area, you can have like hundreds of meters between this. And if you have more run-of-river plant, it's rather than only a few meters. And also here, the fuel is for free, as for all renewable sources, but you have to invest quite a lot upfront, and then operational costs are also rather low. So these technologies are introduced according to the basic principles. And later on, when we introduce the simplified planning tool, you will see that all these equations have been used to reflect these technologies into a planning tool. We also have storage systems, and here we decide like 3 types. One is like the short-term storage for frequency stabilization. One is midterm, which is usually covered by electrochemical batteries, and seasonal storage, like pumped hydro storage, power to gas, hydrogen. And we focus for the island systems on battery systems, and we have usually lithium ion or lead acid batteries. We see now also driven by a large US company, a strong development in lithium ion batteries, which seem to dominate the market in the future. And what is the role of battery systems? So typically it's to store and time shift energy. So if you think about a PV system, you have high power generation during the day when the sun is shining. You store this in a battery and then you can use it in the nighttime. But batteries can go beyond that. They can provide auxiliary services, and I will provide some details on this when we speak about stability criteria. So here is an overview about stability criteria. In your island energy system, you usually make sure that you have enough spinning reserve. You follow an N+1 rule, rotating mass for frequency and voltage control and short circuit power. And let me explain spinning reserve. Spinning reserve is the remaining capacity of generators running in a power system, which is needed to quickly react to changes in demand or supply. And this is theoretical, but here we see in diesel generator, basically the minimum load would be 30%, maximum load is 100%, and it can even go in overload for a certain time. So the green is the area you would usually operate it, and orange you can for a certain time, and gray you can't. If you run it below 30%, it would cause harm to the generator. And then here would be the load demand of the system. So it would be like at 50%. So the spinning reserve is what is left to be quickly provided by the generator. And so I know that usually you run your diesel systems that you have quite a good spinning reserve, so you would not, so if the load increases, excuse me, if the load increases, you would switch on a second generation unit to provide always enough spinning reserve. And batteries could also provide this. So a charged battery can react even quicker than a diesel generator. So if you have batteries into your system, you can reduce the amount of conventional spinning reserve or even switch the generators off. The N+1 reserve is to make sure that if one generating unit, usually the largest, fails, the remaining units should be able to cover the current load. And here's a brief example of what we mean with that. If you need to supply 1.2 megawatt and you have 4 500 kilowatt units, I make a brief test. I'm not sure if you can use the chat for this, but 4 500 kilowatt units are 2 megawatts. So if one unit fails, the remaining is, yeah. So I think you have the answer. The remaining is 1.5 megawatt. So you would still be able to supply the load. But if you have 2 times a 1 megawatt unit, which is also in total 2 megawatt, and one unit fails, you only have 1 megawatt remaining, and then your system would fail. So this shows that a more diverse system with smaller units can be more stable according to this criterion. Then we also have control and dispatch systems. So once you go beyond a simple or a diesel-only system, you need to make sure that, for example, the PV plant is communicating with the diesel generator plant, because in case of a quickly ramping up of the PV power, the diesel needs to be reduced or switched off, or the PV needs to be curtailed to not cause any damage to the conventional power plant. So now let's think about the impact of hybridization. So we see that a diesel-only system is already complex. So the diesel generators, as we said, need to not only cover the demand, but you need to fulfill certain stability criteria. You need to have enough spilling reserve and so on. So the and you always have uncertainty about the demand. You have your demand projections, like your daily projections, and also your annual projections, but always something unexpected can happen, so that too many people together switch on their washing machine, or like there's an unexpected holiday or something like this, and you always need to react with your generation to the changes in demand. But now, introducing renewables into the system via hybridization, you not only have intermittent or like uncertain consumption, you also have uncertain generation. Of course, you can also predict PV generation to a certain degree. So I can be sure that there's no PV generation during the night. But during the day, I can also predict it, but there might be a sudden cloud coverage, and then it is different to what I have expected. And so we're not only having now uncertainty on the demand side, but also uncertainty on the supply side. And this needs, for example, to higher spinning reserve needs. So hybridization causes also a bit more stress on the diesel plants. And the diesel generator still needs to maintain the grid frequency if it's only combined with a PV system, for example. So there must be a minimum share of rotating mass in the system. So the rotating generator of the diesel power plant needs to be able to maintain the frequency so that the inverter of the PV system can adjust to that. And based on this increased complexity and stability criteria, there's something what we call the natural limit of a maximum RE share if we don't have batteries. And I want to explain this here in this figure. So what we see here in blue is the load demand of the system. And then we have a diesel generator which supplies this load in the nighttime hours. Then in the morning, the PV power becomes available, and we see here nicely reduce the diesel power production, and you have more and more covered by PV. But then at like 10 or 11 in the morning, the diesel generator can't be reduced further because there's a limit of the minimal operation. We said that 30% operational capacity is the minimum of the diesel generator, so this can't be reduced. And then also there's a minimum in terms of what rotating mass should be provided according to the current load. So we see now that even if we have theoretically a full coverage of the load by PV, we still need to run the diesel generator. And this picture shows us that it's not only about like shifting now the excess energy to the evening with a battery, it's also to increase the direct usable PV power by enabling a switching off of the diesel generator. So this is also an important function of a battery. And here we see some more illustrations on this. Also thinking about optimal PV shares. And here we see that we increase the PV share, and here in a certain moment it makes sense to introduce a battery system, because then you can switch off the generator. And in this specific case, according to our assumptions, it makes sense to do this, even high share systems, because it reduces the LCOE constantly. And then again, looking at the batteries. So here, just as a function to shift solar to nighttime. So here we see with increased amount of battery capacities, we can use more and more excess solar energy during the night. And here's also then you can always find like an cost optimum, and sometimes it makes sense to not build too much storage. But again, this is typically, it depends situation. And if you now think about like your optimal PV capacities, wind capacities, or like battery capacities for hybridization, you need to consider many input data. You need to understand your future demand. You need to understand what components you want to have. You need to understand the economics of these components. And then you can use a simulation tool to design your system. And as we ask you in the survey, you will do it probably according to a least cost approach. So what is the cost optimal system, but also considering reliability and reduced emissions, which would mean a high RE share. And this is what I said, like, what is the optimal configuration? And as there's no general rule of thumb for this, we always say, okay, if available, use a simulation tool, because if you would just say you should introduce PV 1.5 times the peak load and a battery capacity to cover 1 day, it might fit, but it might not be the optimal system for your specific island grid. Okay, so this was a very quick recap on the basics of hybridization, and I'm just observing the chat. So I've seen there were no questions asked. So just to reassure, so if you have any questions or comments, if you want to say that you see it differently or you have your own experience to share, just let us know in the chat. Okay, Then I will continue with an overview of the purpose of the Simplified Planning Tool 3.0. Again, I will try to be quick because then Toby will follow and explain the functions of the SPT, which is much more inspiring or useful than just a rationale behind it. And here we have this history. Kraus was also asking for what inspired us to develop this. And it was the question, what is the optimal RE share of an island system? And the answer is always, it depends. So it depends on the load profile, on the solar radiation, the renewable resources, the costs you assume. And so that's why we have decided to develop a simulation and optimization tool which helps to determine a techno-economic optimal share of RE technologies in an island system. And the characteristics we specified with DOE were that it should be user-friendly. So like we simplified the range of functions. That's why it's called Simplified Planning Tool. And it's Excel-based. So I think most of you are familiar with Excel. So there are low entry barriers to use it. And it is license-free. So you can, as it's provided, just download it and use it. And then you don't need to pay for this. And we also designed it that it can either be used for a new project, which means there's like a new electrification project in, for example, a QTP, but also for a hybridization project for your already existing supply technologies. And it dates back until 2017. So where we started with the version 1.0 and conducted several trainings and feedback rounds with stakeholders. And eventually we are now at version 3.0. And Toby already provided a link in the chat that you can use to download the tool. So please click on the link in the chat and then go to the folder SPT tool. And here you can make a right click and download the tool. So you can already do this while I'm presenting here so that you are prepared for the hands-on introduction. So, and in the last feedback round, we included wind and hydropower as a new functionality, and also things like load growth and a more granular diesel power plant. This especially came from NPC SPAC as a feedback that who were real experts in operating diesel generators, so we were happy to include this. And it's built in a multi-sheet Excel tool, which will be explained by Toby. So I'm just briefly touching this. Can you state in the chat if you have used the tool Homer Energy before for any of your simulations? If yes, you just write Homer yes into the chat. And if not, if you're not familiar, you write Homer no. So please let me know if you have in your work, if you have used or if you're familiar with the simulation software Homer Energy. So there's one. Okay, it looks okay, it's mixed. So we know that just giving you an intro for the ones who have not used it, Homer is now a commercial software which is has a graphical user interface to simulate and optimize like island systems. So compared to an SPT, it's not a simplified. So this is a complex planning tool, and it's kind of the industry standard. But the problem is on one hand, you need to have a license, which is quite expensive. So to do just a quick analysis on your island system, you might not want to invest into this. And the second is it's a bit complex. You have certain settings you can make which really change the outputs, but it's not quite transparent. So what we did is we used Homer as a benchmark for developing the SPT, but we tried to take the most important functions, and based on this, then to have a simplified planning tool, which is more easy to learn and to access. In general, if you have Homer and you're familiar with it, we always recommend to use it. Of course, there's this there were like ages of development power went into Homer, so we're not here to compete with it, but to bring in a complementary tool for an easy entry to the field of simulating hybrid systems. And I think also it's stated in the RPS rules that you can use any acknowledged simulation software for calculating your RE share. So you can use Homer, you can use SPT, and maybe there are others, I don't know. So just as we usually ask, what is the comparison with Homer? So for trained engineers, it's the preferred tool if available. And but the level of detail of specific input settings increases the complexity, compare results of different hybridization proposals. So it's also a bit complex for DOE to evaluate different proposals if they just show their Homer results. And the SPT can help to reduce the complexity of such comparative studies. And as I said, we benchmark this to Homer, and we have similar results according to SUE, RE share, and diesel consumption for tests we conducted for PV battery case studies, or PV battery diesel, because hybrid systems. And of course, there are some limitations when we use a simplified tool. So one is to mention that we only calculate a reference week. So if you have strong seasonalities in your load or in your RE resources, the results might be suboptimal. And it gives the optimization algorithm depends on the search space you will define. This will become more clear in your exercises. So we also need to have a bit of a idea of what you're looking for before you can use the tool. But for both limitations, there are solutions. So so I think you can overcome them. Okay, so this was on the intro on the basics of hybridization and the purpose of the simplified planning tool. And I would like to hand over to Toby now to introduce you to the SPT 3.0 and stop my screen sharing here. And asking Toby, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Philip.
Perfect. Then, yeah, please enjoy Toby's excellent presentation and intro to the simplified planning tool 3.0. And again, the link is in the chat to download the tool. So Toby, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. So thanks, Philip, for providing us with the basics of hybridization and the basics of renewable energy technologies. And we can use this knowledge now to apply the simplified planning tool. And of course, you can use your knowledge of the projects you are following on in the Philippines. And now just again, you can download the tool on the link I sent through the chat. And please, also when you open it, please enable the content, because the programmed features are needed to that the tool is working correctly. And we first start using the tool by defining the demand side. So we define the load. For this, if you have the tool open, please go to the tab Existing Load. And in this tab, we can define the energy demand of your system and the distribution of the energy demand over time. And in our case, we define the load profile per day. And for this, we first can insert the electricity demand per day. And for this, we have two options. We can either use the number of households in the respective system. And here we can insert a number of households, the specific energy demand of the households per day in kilowatt hours, and we can also add a commercial activity. So this has as a consequence that in the weekends, the demand will be a little lower because we assume that enterprises don't work in the weekend. Or we can also insert the energy consumption, the daily energy consumption directly. So for example, if you have data on the energy consumption per year or depending or which time frame you have, you can divide it by days and then you can insert the daily energy demand. So now we will try to use the tool with a hypothetical example, and for that I ask you to insert 5,000 households in the yellow highlighted field, number of households, and then below please insert 2 kilowatt hours per day per household, and then we add a 20% commercial consumption on this demand. So next we can define how the consumption is distributed over the hours of the day. And therefore we have two default values here, or two default distributions. And one is called evening peak and one is called midday peak. So this determines that the peak load is happening on either the evening or at noon, and this is a default. So here you can't change the values, but you have the option to use an individual option for the load curve, and for this you can insert the data yourself. And for now, please use evening peak.
Sorry, Toby, just to step in and to reassure, Andrea already wrote in the chat that this is meant to follow the simulation using the SPT tool you have downloaded. Just to quickly check, you can write tool yes once you have the tool downloaded and open and are able to follow this the presentation with your putting in your own or the input values Toby is presenting.
That's a good point. Thank you very much. So I will wait for another moment.
See, and if not, even more important, you write tool no, because then we can spend a few minutes to solve this issue. Of course, this is much more difficult in a virtual training than if compared to sitting in the same room. But that's why we want to make sure that it works for everyone. If not, just write tool no, and we will try to solve this. And so far we have only received tool yes, so but still waiting a little bit, because this is the advantage of this training, that it's not only a presentation but really gives you the opportunity that you follow directly the steps, and you're also able to compare directly the results. And if you have different results, you also write in the chat just question or different results, and we can solve it. Okay,
Exactly.
Toby, but I think, sorry for the interruption, but
No
it looks
problem.
like the only tool, yes. So that's, I think, why we made this Excel base so that it works for everyone. And yeah, please continue, and I will remain here as a backup for any questions.
Perfect, thanks. So yeah, and when defining this load profile, you can use this green highlighted drop-down button, and then you can choose between evening peak, midday peak, and individual. And normally, an evening peak can reflect customers of a residential type, and a midday peak can occur, for example, if commercial enterprises are part of the load. And then during the day, most of the energy is spent. And here is also the individual option outlined. So for the individual load profile, you can insert a percentage of the load per hour. So this way you can distribute the 100% throughout the day, and then in the end you have to check if the 100% of the load is distributed. And as a result, you get a load curve. So in our case, we use evening peak, and as a result, we get a load profile where the load is peaking in the evening. An additional feature which can be defined in the existing load tab is the load growth. So here the user can insert a factor that leads to an annual increase of the demand. And below the field where you insert the load growth factor, you can immediately see the effect. So you see the yearly demand in kilowatt hours, but as we now have only 0 typed in, then the demand stays the same throughout the years. And we will also check out this load growth feature a little later, but for now, we want to get used to simulate and a hybrid system, and for that we have to define the inputs. So now we want to define a PV hybrid system, and for this, please go to the input solar sheet. So the first step in defining the hybrid system is to insert values regarding the costs and the size of the renewable energy conversion technology. And for our example now, we define the PV system. And for all of the input parameters, we have default values and we have individual values. So even if we now use default for the sake of getting a little quicker through this example, we definitely advise to insert your specific values if you have them at hand. For example, if you know what the PV system would cost in your area or from your distributors, then use these values. Or for example, if you already know which sizes of the PV system you want to install, or you want to see what effect they have on the generation costs, then you can also insert them. But for now, please use the default values, as we just want to demonstrate how the simulation works. And as cost options, we have the PV CapEx, standing for capital expenditures in pesos per kilowatt. We have the PV OPEX, the operation and maintenance costs. They are inserted as pesos per kilowatt per year. And we have the lifespan of the PV plant. As next, we select the capacity of the PV plant, and this is inserted in kilowatt peak. So now we have a default value, which is 1,800, And this is obtained because in the background of the SPT, the peak load is multiplied by a factor of 2. And this is just the default, but of course you can use individual values, and tomorrow in the exercise we will have the chance to insert individual values. So done this, we have to define the solar irradiance at the site location. And also for this, we have some default values in case you don't have the data at hand, the exact data at hand. So kindly select Mindanao. And then the irradiance data is represented by the daily energy output. And that's the average daily energy output. And this is defined by the kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak. So this means what a PV plant of 1 kilowatt peak would output as an average daily energy output. And this obviously depends on the irradiance at the site. So what happens if we select Mindanao? In the background of the SPT tool, we have 3 time series of specific PV output and for 1 week. And this is also one limitation of the SPT tool, because we just calculate all the values for 1 week. And now, as we have chosen Mindanao, then the Mindanao irradiance and specific PV output value will be used. Nevertheless, of the limitations, this is still enough to calculate a yearly result for the generation costs. And we can further specify the irradiance parameters by inserting an individual average value. So by inserting this individual daily energy output, the time series is adjusted so that the average value will be the value you insert. And we have a resource to obtain these PV output values. And one exemplary resource would be the website globalsolaratlas.info. Sorry, and you can go to this website now and try out to find this island yourself. Go to Sarangani, search for Sarangani, Philippines, and then it should pop up in the search field, and you can click on it, and then you should directly come to this island, or otherwise you have to search or zoom to it. And then please use full screen, and then on the right hand side of the website you find the map data. So if you click on the map, then for this specific location you will get all the available data on the right hand side. So I will give you 1 minute so that you can maybe try yourself. I will post a link to the chat. And if you click on this island in southern Mindanao, then another hint is please select per day, because then you get the daily average photovoltaic output. So in case this doesn't work for you now, or you don't have, you can't access your browser, then just use the value 4.08. Of course, this value changes a little bit if you click on another side of the island. So let's just use the same value now. So we use 4.08 kilowatt hour per kilowatt peak per day. And we insert it to the respective field in the SPT tool. So when we have this, then the irradiance parameters are adjusted. And as a next step, we have to insert the other components of our system, which are the diesel generator, then, for example, a battery system, and other general system parameters are defined. Our diesel power plant can again be defined or determined by cost and technical parameters and by sizing parameters. So let's start with the cost and technical parameters. We have again the CAPEX and OPEX, but in this case, the OPEX are divided into variable OPEX and fixed OPEX. And an example for variable OPEX can be lubricants, because they depend on how much energy is produced. So therefore it is inserted as pesos per kilowatt hour. And the fixed OPEX are inserted as pesos per kilowatt per year. And this could, for example, be a maintenance contract. The efficiency of the power plant is inserted as fuel per kilowatt hour in liters per kilowatt hour. So this value is given for the full load operation. Normally this is available in the technical, in the specification sheets. And of course, when the diesel generator operates at a lower load or at a lower operation, then the efficiency is lower, and these efficiencies are calculated in the background. The initial diesel fuel costs represented the diesel price in year one. This is pesos per liter, and then the diesel price increase is a percentage per year, which by which the diesel price increases with each year that the SPT tool considers. And of course, the lifespan has also to be defined. But for now, please just use the default values. And for the diesel power plant size, we can use 3 parameters to determine the size. We have the number of genset units, we have the diesel power plant total capacity, and we have the capacity of the smallest unit. So for the diesel genset units, we can insert 5+, and this means that the number of genset units defines or determines the efficiency of that power plant. So also, if you have, for example, 10 generators in your power plant or in your system, then you can just insert 5+ generators. The only difference is that the additional efficiency improvements for more than 5 generators are not considered. But there is a difference, for example, between if you just enter 1 genset or 5 gensets. So in the case you have also more or 5+ gensets, you just insert the total capacity of your power plant. And another important parameter is the capacity of the smallest unit, because this unit defines how your power plant can adjust the operation to low demands. So for example, if you just have 1 large generator, then and you have a low demand, then there is a low efficiency of the operation will be the consequence. And also the lower load limit of the generators is set to 30%. So this means the generator has to run at minimum 30% of the rated capacity, because otherwise it would be damaged. Now, when we use default, we go on and define the battery system. Just scroll down to the next section. We're still in the input solar section. And here we have again some default values prepared. So you can choose between lithium ion and lead acid as default types. So here you already have the CAPEX, the costs and the technical aspects inserted, and also the size is automatically calculated. And for example, if you use individual, you can you can adjust the battery type according to the technical specifications you have at hand. So we have again as cost parameters the CAPEX and OPEX, and as specific battery technical parameters we have the C rate. This represents the power output depending on the capacity, and the capacity here is given in kilowatt hours. And the maximum depth of discharge, or the DOD, is a percentage which reflects the maximum energy you can take out of the battery without, you can discharge from the battery without damaging the battery. So another parameter is the state of charge. So you can just discharge the battery to a state of charge of 20%, which means a depth of discharge of 80% of the capacity. And the charging and charging efficiency and discharging efficiency is used to define the losses of the battery use. And as a last parameter, there's again the lifespan of the battery, and then we can define the battery size. So often the battery size is also given in amp hours, but here we use it in kilowatt hours because then it's easier to adapt it to the load. But of course you can just convert the kilowatt hours to amp hours. You can do that by dividing by the voltage. So we use again the default values here. And now we define the system parameters. And here we have an important cost parameter, namely the discount rate, or also it can also be called the interest rate. And this is used to calculate a yearly cost, so to calculate the annuities of all our costs, CAPEX and OPEX, and for example fuel costs. And we have the project duration, and this is also an important parameter because this project duration defines which time period the SPT simulates. And there is a maximum time period of 20 years you can apply in the SPT tool. And then we have the distribution losses, and we have the system stability, or also called rotating mass, or also called spinning reserve. That's what Philip explained earlier. And we apply this stability factor as a percentage of the demand. So it means that 40% of the total demand have to be covered by a rotating mass. And for example, a rotating generator is the diesel generator. And this means that this generator can provide system stability. For example, if there is a sudden change in demand or a sudden change in renewable energy generation due to clouds or due to less wind, for example. But now for the solar system, it would be cloudy weather or maybe a failure in the system. Then the diesel generator can quickly jump in and keep the frequency of the AC grid in a stable operating state. But of course, also a hydro power plant could provide this system stability, or also the modern inverters of batteries. They can emulate such a rotating mass and also provide the system stability. So if there is enough battery capacity, then the diesel generator can be turned off. So this value can, of course, also adapted individually according to local site-specific conditions. And then we can still insert some additional cost parameters, such as project development costs, other initial costs, for example, transformers, other OPEX, and fixed personnel costs. Then in case we have to extend the distribution grid for our hybridization, we can insert grid initial costs or fixed grid OPEX and the lifespan. So this is to consider the extension of the grid for renewable energy capacities. And now this is a very important section. If you scroll further down, we arrive at the field where we can insert our RPS requirements. And here we have to insert a percentage for the respective year. We have it here in 5-year steps. So for example, the minimum RE share, we use now for an example that in the starting year, we use 1%. And in the final year, which is now year 20, we use 20%. So that means that the increment is 1%. And please insert then the other values in the fields. And the RE share is defined as the share of consumed electricity. So this means the electricity sold to the consumer without the losses. And that is generated by the renewable energy capacities or renewable energy technologies. And now we are almost ready to start our simulation. So in case you still need some values, just type into the chat. And otherwise, you can check now again which capacities we have chosen. So we choose the default values, which is 1,800 kilowatt for the PV system, roughly 1,000 kilowatt hour capacity for the battery, and 1,350 kilowatt for the diesel capacity. And we also see that we choose no load growth. So we assume that the load stays the same. And now you can press the simulation button. So this will take a couple of seconds, maybe up to 30 seconds. Because now the SPT does the following. It generates for each hour, it calculates the demand and the corresponding energy generation. And it checks if, for example, our PV system can cover the demand. And for example, during the night or during low PV, then either the stored energy in the battery can cover the demand or the diesel capacity. And according to this dispatch strategy, the SPT calculates all the values for 1 week, and then it scales the values up to yearly values. And then it calculates important parameters such as the levelized cost of energy, the renewable energy share, and through the renewable energy share, you can see if your system complies with the RPS requirements. And in case your tool has already finished to calculate, then please type in simulation done or just done into the chat so that I know that we can go on. So meanwhile, the simulation is still going for some participants. I quickly explain how we can see how we can access the results. We can see them in 5-year steps in the sheet called simulation results. And here we can see all the results in 5-year steps in tabular form. At the bottom in bold, there is the most important values, for example, LCOE, RE share, and the unmet load, if some of the load can't be covered. And it is outlined if the RPS requirements, or it is highlighted if the RPS requirements are met or not met. So please go to simulation results solar. And another aspect here is that we can see the power flows of year 1 and the last year. So the power flow for 1 exemplary week. And we can also see the cost distribution. And now we can check out some results in detail. So for example, if you go to the column of year 1, the first column shows the average values. So the average results over the lifespan. And in year 1, for example, we should have now a resulting levelized cost of electricity of 17.79 pesos per kilowatt hour, a renewable energy share of 41%, and it says unmet load is 0, so therefore all of the demand or all of the consumption can be covered, and the RPS share or the renewable energy share in year 1 has to be 1% to comply with the RPS, and so therefore we meet the RPS targets. If we have a look at the weekly power flow in year 1, we can see how our system operates, and this is also a good graphic how to understand how the SPT works. So for each hour of the week, you can see them at the x-axis. Above you can see how the load is covered. So the load here, including the losses, is the black dashed line. And for example, we can see the peak load in the evening. And we can see that the peak load, it's around 900 kilowatt, and it's in the evening after sunset. So our solar system can't cover this peak load. You can see the PV generation in the yellow with the yellow dashed line. And so the evening peak has to be covered by the diesel, because also the battery discharge, you see it in purple, it's already discharged before. But during the PV generation, so during the day, all of the demand is covered by the solar system. And you can see the battery charging as the line below the x-axis. And now we have a look at the cost distribution. We have a pretty high share of diesel costs. So this means the investment costs and maintenance costs and fuel costs of the diesel power plant. So here all of the costs are given as an annuity. So they are divided by the years, and also the discount factor is considered. And so even if a diesel power plant has lower upfront costs, so lower installation costs than the PV plant, the total costs are higher. So we have some of the costs also going to the battery. And you can see that in the final year, the diesel costs are increasing. And this is due to the fact that we inserted a growth factor or an increase factor for the diesel price. So we assume that the diesel price, according to the oil price, is rising on an average basis throughout the years. We can see the yearly simulation results if you go to the next tab. It's called Yearly Simulation Results Solar. And here you can see all the most important results in a tabular form for each year, not just the 5-year steps as before. And you can use this, for example, to check if each year complies with your RPS requirements. So, for example, now we didn't use any load growth. So it means that the renewable energy share stays the same throughout the years because the annual consumption stays the same. And now I want to introduce the second function of the SPT tool. And it is called the scenario function. And we define as scenarios, we define multiple system configurations. So we can define a range of sizes for PV and battery. And for all of those sizes or systems, all configurations are calculated. So we have including the diesel only, which would be 0. We have 11 sizes for PV and battery, and this means that we have 121 possible configurations, and all of these configurations are simulated simultaneously. And this is a good way, for example, if you don't know exactly how large your PV system should be or how large your battery should be, you can use this to quickly obtain the generation costs, so the LCOE, and the renewable energy share of such a system. Although here it has to be stated that it is the average LCOE and the average renewable energy share throughout the years, but we will see this now in detail. And we use now the multiplier option. You have two options how you can insert the range of sizes. So on the right-hand side, which is not highlighted in green, now you see you can insert sizes values. So a range of sizes you want to inquire, or you use the multiplier. And the multiplier is a factor by which your peak load is multiplied. Like this, you get the PV size, or the hourly average energy consumption is multiplied, and like this you get the battery size. Why could we use the multiplier? So this is a good way how you can adapt the range of sizes to your system. So you will obtain a set of ranges that are in the dimension of approximately around the dimension of your system. So now please use the multiplier option. And I also have to say that the diesel generator stays the same and all the cost parameter stays the same as before inputted in the previous sections. So please use the multiplier and start the simplified scenarios. And while all our sizes are calculated, or all our configurations are calculated, I can explain the difference between the simplified scenarios and the detailed scenarios. We, in the simplified scenarios, we obtain the LCOE and the renewable energy share when we use an average demand over the lifespan. So this just is important when you use a load growth factor. So in our case now, we didn't use a load growth factor. So actually both results of both options would be the same. But one crucial difference of both is that the simplified version is much faster because it just uses the average consumption, so the average demand during the 20 years, for example, we defined. And the detailed scenario calculates the results of each year for each of the configurations. So that would be 121 times a maximum of 20 years, and that's a lot of computation time needed. And so the detailed scenarios needs approximately 1 hour. So therefore, for a quick assumption, I can recommend the simplified version because it still gives an idea. And we will see that when we now go to the scenario results, we can see for all of the different configurations, we can see the least cost option is outlined. So the lowest LCOE is outlined black. And also we have a black outline around the highest RE share. So what does this matrix show? So I hope your simulations are done. Maybe type again done into the chat if you could start and finalize the scenario results, and then go to the tab which is called Scenario Results Solar. In this matrix, we see on the top in the horizontal line, we see all the PV sizes, and at the left side vertically you see all the battery capacities. And in between you see all the results, LCOE and RE share for each configuration. So for example, in the left top corner, you see the LCOE for the diesel only system because it's 0 PV and 0 battery, and it's 27.26 pesos. And below there, it's the corresponding renewable energy share because it's 0. And for example, the black outlined LCOE of 20.46 is the lowest possible generation costs in this set of configurations. And the corresponding renewable energy share is 34%. So, and the corresponding sizes of this system are 1,170 kilowatt. You can see it above, and 762 kilowatt hours of battery capacity. You see it horizontally on the left-hand side. And for the same goes for the option with the highest renewable energy share. You see it on the left corner with a LCOE of 22.86. So here, as we have larger PV and battery sizes, it is more expensive, and therefore also the LCOE is a little higher. So now we want to go on and try to use the load growth. We go back to the existing load sheet, and there we insert 3% to the annual load growth. And what you can see that below the daily demand in the corresponding years is increasing. So you can see that even a percentage of 3% can have a pretty large effect throughout 20 years. And now we switch again to the input solar, and we leave all the settings as we had them. And we try to simulate the same system. So again, we have two options. We can simulate one specific system, or we can simulate the multiple system with the scenario function. But now please again use this simulation function. So simulate again our specific system and start the simulation by clicking on the button. And when your simulation has finished, you can just type again done into the chat. Or of course, you can also type questions into the chat. So Philip can answer them in the chat, or we will also later put a question and answers file to the Nextcloud folder, to the Nextcloud, and answer the questions later if they are more specific questions. So meanwhile, the simulations are still running. I can still show the effect on the results. If you go again on the simulation results tab, you will see under the average values, you can see there is written unmet load from year 14. So this means that in a future year, namely from year 14 on till the end of the lifespan, the load is not covered anymore. So this means that we should try to increase a capacity, and also a good way to realize that there is an unmet load is to look at the power flows of the final year. And here you can see that one specific area below the load curve is empty or is white. So this means that none of the generation capacities can cover this load. So now we go back to the input solar sheet and we try to increase the diesel generator, that maybe this can cover the load throughout the years. So we select individual for the diesel power plant size. We insert one generator. We double the size of the existing generator to 2,700. You can manually insert this number to the total capacity and also to the capacity of the smallest unit, because we just have one generator here. And then you can scroll down and run the simulation again. And now we hope that this increase in the genset size can cover the load also in, let's say, for example, year 14 and the future years, because the previous system was too small. So neither the renewable capacities nor the genset could cover that load. So as I want to go on a little bit quicker, because we have to finish in around half an hour, I want to already explain the results. So if you then go to the simulation results again, when your simulation is finished, you will see now in the average column that the load is met. So it is met, but we still just have one large generator. And this, as explained earlier, is very inflexible for lower loads. So it can lead to a low operation efficiency, and it can lead to an excess energy, because the diesel power plant can just run at 30% of the smallest unit. And now let's try another input variation. And this would be, we use 2 genset units. Please go again to the input solar sheet. Go to the diesel plant section and enter 2 number of genset units. Set this to 2. And then we define, and then we say we have 2 units and each is 1,350 kilowatts rated capacity, and together they form the power plant total capacity of 2,700, so the same as before. We start again the simulation, and now we want to see what the difference in the results is. So while your system is still running, I can already explain some important differences. So what we will find out now is that if we use 2 diesel gensets, the LCOE will decrease. And why is that? Because there's less, there's a higher generator efficiency, because both generators can work at a higher efficiency, or for example, if there is very low demand, only one diesel generator will jump on and can work at a higher operation state, load state. And there is less excess electricity generated, so there's less diesel consumed. And what we can see here is that in the power flow of the system with just one generator, all the excess energy has to be stored in the battery. And this means that the battery system is charged and discharged very often. And this could lead to wear and tear of the batteries, and could, in a real situation, it could degrade the lifespan of the battery. So it's not considered in the SPT tool, but you should keep in mind that if the battery is very often discharged and charged, this could lead to a degradation of the battery. So now we want to simulate also a diesel-only system, which is often the status quo on for example, a Philippine island or in rural areas. So therefore, we go to input solar again. But you can use, we have sheets for all 3 hybrid options. So for the solar hybrid system, for the wind hybrid system, for the hydro hybrid system, and for a combined hybrid system. And in each of those possibilities in the SPT, you can set the PV or the wind or the hydro to 0, and also the battery to 0, and then you have a diesel-only system. And we will do this now in our input solar sheet. We will go to select PV size, then go to individual, set it to 0 kilowatt. Then we will go, we will set the generator back to default, so that we just have one generator. This you do under select diesel plant size. And then we set the battery to 0. And this is done by selecting individual for battery size and then typing 1 into the battery capacity. So now we are ready to simulate the diesel-only system. Start again the simulation. And meanwhile, I can explain what will happen. So when you go again to the power flows in your simulation result, you will see that now all the load is covered by the generator. So it is the brown area. But also you see that, for example, in the night, that's when the load is very low, you still have a genset generation because the generator can't go below 30% of its rated capacity. And you don't have to do this now, but I will just show what happens if we choose 5 plus generators, or if you use more generators as we did before. Then we have, and of course important is that we choose also as a smallest generator unit a low kilowatt peak. So for example, now we have 250 kilowatt as the generator lowest, as the lowest capacity of a generator. And this smallest generator can adapt to the low load. And therefore no excess generation is produced because the larger generators stay idle. Now let's switch again the existing load to 0. because we want to see how other hybrid systems perform. We go back to existing load. We set the annual load growth to 0. And afterwards, please go to the wind input sheet. You can click, you can use the arrows below at the where the sheets of the Excel are shown. You can go to the right, click to the right, and then you will, in blue, there is the input wind sheet. And the structure of the input sheet is the same as in the PV hybrid system, but of course there's a difference in how we define the wind park. So we have again cost parameters as capex and opex, and we have a different way how to determine our wind park. So the first step is to again define how the renewable energy resource, so in this case it's the wind speed, is at our specific site location. And this is at 50 meters height. So that's important. If you have data of the wind speed on your site, for example, from measurements, then make sure that you insert the average wind speed at 50 meters height in meters per second. And the next data you want to insert is the wind park capacity. What's the kilowatt peak capacity you want to obtain from your wind park? And this time we will go to the individual values and insert some values here. And you also have to define the wind turbine type. And the wind turbine type is reflected by the kilowatt peak of one turbine. And we can select between 10 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt, and 1000 kilowatt turbines. And if you select the type, then the number of turbines is automatically adjusted to the wind park capacity. And you see also the parameter hub height below. You can't set this parameter because this is adjusted automatically according to the wind turbine type, because larger turbines are higher. This again influences the wind speed, and then also the mean wind speed is adjusted. Now let's insert some values. And first, let me say that the wind profile is again used as a time series, an exemplary time series for 1 week. So for each hour of 1 week, the wind speeds are given, and we can still adjust this time series of wind speeds by inserting our site-specific average wind speed. So unfortunately, seasonal variations can't be considered, but the average wind speed is considered here. And then the weekly values are again scaled up to yearly values later for the results. So this was what our exemplary wind speed profile looks during 1 week. And we can also see here that the wind speed is a little more stochastic. The distribution of the wind speed is more stochastic than the solar. And one possible resource to obtain data. So in general, it has to be said that to plan a wind park in detail, it's crucial to have measured wind speed data. So you have to measure wind speed during 1 year or even 2 years. But now for this quick hybridization assessment, we can use the Global Wind Atlas. You can again go to this website. And there you can again, I will share the link. or maybe you find it yourself. globalwindatlas.info. And here you can please use again full screen so that all the legends and data is available. Then you search for again, and you have to put on full screen so that you can use the search field. Search again for Sarangani Island. And on the top left, it should be already wind speed chosen. Otherwise, use as explanatory layer wind speed, then mean wind speed. And if you hold your your cursor on the map in your browser, then you can read from the legend the corresponding wind speed at the site. But again, important, please choose 50 meters height. This you can do at this legend on the bottom right. You can select 50, and then the cursor, the location of where the cursor is, the little white arrow on the legend will show what the wind speed is. So in case you can explore this tool later a little bit more in detail. So for now, let's just use the 6 meters per second. It's almost the best location on Sarangani Island. Let's use this as an example and insert it to our SPT tool. As wind park capacity, we use 1000 kilowatt peak. And as a wind turbine type, we use 500 kilowatt peak. So in the background, the SPT adjusts to 2 wind turbines, and these will provide the 1000 kilowatt of the wind park. And you see that the hub height is adjusted to 70 meters. So that's how the wind park is defined. For all the other parameters, for all the other components, the parameter input stays the same. So now, to save some time, I will just go through it. So you don't have to do the simulation yourself these times. Just be sure that you again insert the RPS requirements. Then you again start the simulation. You can also start it. I will just already explain the results, because in about 10 minutes we have to end this session. But let me say that also the simulation results have the same structure as explained before for the PV hybrid system. So we have again the simulation results wind, where we have the results in tabular form for in 5-year steps, as well as for the average year. And we have the power flow. We have weekly power flow graphics for the first year and the final year. And we have the cost distribution of the first year and the final year. So it's always interesting to compare those 2 years, because you can see how, in case of load growth or also due to the diesel price increase, how the values shift and how the capacities or how the system operates differently. And what we will get as an levelized cost of electricity of our system is 17.6 pesos, a renewable energy share of 35. The load is met, and also the RPS requirements are met in year 1. And of course, for all the 5-year steps, you see if the RPS requirements are met. And there is a lot of more results to be explored, but these are the most important ones. And let's have a look on the weekly power flow. And as we saw before, that the wind speed is differently distributed or is stochastically distributed throughout the weeks. So we have periods, for example, here on the first day, we see that during the day there's just little wind speed, so the wind turbines can't generate a lot of power, and therefore the diesel generator has to jump on and has to cover the demand throughout the day as well as the peak load. And we can see on a later day, it's the third day, we see that during the peak load, the wind speed is also high, and therefore the wind park can cover a high share of the peak load. And let's go on to the cost distribution. We see a similar cost distribution, and here again we can see that the diesel costs are pretty high due to the fuel costs and the running costs. Let's skip the scenarios for now. The scenarios work the same as for the solar. So we can again simulate simultaneously several sizes and several configurations. I will quickly again show the matrix. So if you run the simulation again, you will see this time the wind size on the top, and we can explore all LCOE and all RE shares for each of the configuration, and we will get a least cost option here, which can generate electricity for 19.75 pesos per kilowatt hour. And we have the system with the highest RE share is achieves a renewable energy share of 68%. And here it's important to point out, as this value is in the bottom right corner, so this means that this is the limit of our sizes range. So maybe if we, or it's probable if we probably when we increase the wind sizes range, so for example if we calculate sizes up to 10,000 kilowatts, then of course the renewable energy share could even increase, or if we increase the battery capacity. So this also depends a little on the sizing selection. And now I just want to show what a changing of the turbine type would have as a consequence, or which consequence the change of the turbine type has. And if you go back to the select wind park size, you leave it at individual. You can leave the mean wind speed at 6. The wind park capacity is still 1,000. But now we use the wind turbine. The wind turbine we increase from 500 kilowatt per turbine to 1,000 kilowatt per turbine. And you can see also below, the hub height increases from 70 to 100 meters. And at the higher height, the wind speed is higher. And this will then have an effect also on the levelized costs of energy. So why is that? If we simulate again the system, you can do this now. You can. We have still 5 minutes. So let's change the wind turbine type to 1,000. We scroll again down to our system simulation. So again, not the scenarios this time, but we want to again simulate the specific system. And then we click at wind diesel battery simulation. We click on the bottom at the button start simulation. And when our SPT tool has finished to calculate, we will obtain the following result. And this is that the LCOE would drop to a lower value, namely 16.4 pesos per kilowatt hour in the first year. And this is the LCOE reduction is because the larger turbine is higher and it can use more higher wind speed to increase the power output. And here we go quickly back to the theory, but only to also show it in a graphic way. It is crucial that the wind speed is right or is good at the site, because the wind speed is considered in the formula of the power output. The wind speed is in there with a power of 3, and this means that it increases, the power output increases exponentially with the higher wind speed. And of course, with lower wind speed, it decreases in an exponential way. So as a rule of thumb, the wind speed should be higher than 4 or 5. But of course, this depends on the local conditions. And therefore, a good wind speed measurement is needed. And I will stop here now. We have still to explore one hydro hybrid system for tomorrow. I will follow up in this tomorrow and continue the presentation. And here we will again then explore how we define the hydro hybrid system. And with this, I would be open to some further questions. You can either ask them directly or you can type them into the chat, and we will try to answer them now, or we will answer them later through the Q&A file, which we will then upload to the cloud. And with this, I hope that you could have an idea how to use the SPT. Of course, it was a bit quick now, but I think this should give a first impression how the SPT works. So first step is to define the demand of the system, or also called the load of the system. Then a load profile is generated, and then this is all in the tab existing load. Then the next step would be to define your generating components, so the diesel generator and the renewable energy capacities. For now, we have seen how we can define the PV power plant and how we can define the size of the wind park. And next time we will see how to define the hydro plant. And in each input sheet, you also can define the diesel generator, the battery, and general system settings. And then when you simulate, you have two functions. You can simulate your specific system, or you can use the scenario function to simulate several systems. And then you can see the results in the corresponding sheets of the Excel system. So maybe you can still explore a bit more the sheets, and in case you also have a manual included, and you can ask questions, and tomorrow we will dive again into the tool, and also we will calculate the results for some more specific exercises tomorrow. So with this, I give the word back to Philip.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. Thanks for the really nice overview and intro to the functionalities of the tools. So to conclude the day, I would like to do another survey with you to collect your feedback. So please, everyone, go to menti.com again, and this time enter the code 5147627. So again, go to menti.com and enter the code 5147627. So please use your browser or your mobile device and go to menti.com and then 5147627. 627. And you can log in. And we see already compliments to Toby in the chat. Yeah, I think this, you have the advantage that this is now the training number 4 we conduct, so we really know what we're doing now. This is the advantage for the participants in Mindanao here. And so first thing again is to check if there are any remaining questions. So go to menti.com 5147627, and any remaining question. If not, you can just write none or thank you. And then we see if you have any remaining questions for Toby or myself for day 1 here. So if not, you can, here. So there's one question which states, is the load profile of the week represents the load profile for a year? So as I explained in the intro to the tool that we need to simplify, so it is a load profile which is in hourly time steps and is created as a weekly load profile, so from Monday till Sunday. So you can see the differences. You can see the differences between weekdays and weekend, but then it is assumed as that every week in the year has the same profile. So this is the simplification. So we cannot adjust for like seasonalities. So it is 52 times the same weekly load profile. So I hope this clarifies here the question. And tomorrow in the exercise, you will also be able to bring in your own load data, and then we can see if this is helps you in simulating. Okay, so then thanks for your feedback here. Then I would go to the next question, and here you can rate for this day of the workshop: usefulness of the information, quality of the presentation, quality of discussions, presenter skills, length of the workshop, and how the video conference software worked for you. Okay, so we have quite a good feedback here. So thank you very much. I wait a little bit until, yeah, so I think, Toby, we're reaching our full potential now. So training number 4, we had an average 10 out of 10 points. This is incredible. So thank you very much for the feedback here. And we will try to maintain the standard of these presentations tomorrow. So now I invite you to briefly switch on your video if possible and unmute yourself. And then we can wave a little goodbye. And then we see us tomorrow, 1 p.m. And for tomorrow, please bring your own exercises if you have them, bring your own data, and we can really have an interactive session where we can help you with your specific questions. Before I close it, Toby, did I forget anything? What do we need for tomorrow?
I don't think so. No, we have one prepared exercise, and the second part is that we can use the participants' data which they bring. And yeah, I think we will stop tomorrow a little earlier than usual, as Andrea proposed. So we'll stop at 4:30 this time. Is that correct, Andrea?
Yes, so so for the participants, especially for NPC Spog and Adrian, yeah, you may bring your data sets and we will simulate them to the SPT. And to note, we will end, supposedly we will end 5 p.m. tomorrow, but we are trying to squeeze the time. So by 4:30, we will say bye to our for the session. So thank you all for today for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then tomorrow, 1 p.m., 6 a.m. German time. Okay. See you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Personally, I am very thankful for this training, sir, ma'am. This is very helpful for our partner electric cooperatives in the Philippines. We are partnered with, I think, right now, more than 20 island electric cooperatives in the country. And it will be a great help for them. We will be sharing this to them because right now what we are only using is the Homer software, and with the licensing that needed, so it will be difficult for the ECs to avail that software for their planning and for their use. So this is a great help for them. We are excited to share this information to all our partner ECs and so they can use for their electrification projects, no, to comply with the RPS.
SPT is a very useful tool in order to, or for the mandated participants to plan and in order to comply and implement the RPS, and as well as evaluate the system reliability, also the system costs, and even can be used for generation expansion planning. Particularly in hybrid energy systems that supports electrification for isolated microgrid or off-grids. I think what is what is special or interesting about this is the simplicity in terms of on how to use it. The learning curve for this is very fast, while it gives you the very important or essential information for planning, such as the LCOE, RE share, and the unserved energy. And surely it will help the Filipino policy implementers and energy people stakeholders in energy systems planning. Aside from LEAP, I've been using LEAP in my energy system modeling, and I would like to thank you for teaching me this planning tool, and I've learned a lot. And I would like to thank Dr. Philip, Sir Toby, of course DOE, REMB, and ASEP. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the team, especially to the RLI ASEP, Mr. Dr. Philip and Toby. Thank you again. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, or 3 weeks, I think. And it's kind of hard, but the price that we get in doing these things will eventually a fulfillment within us that we are here to help those people in the off-grid areas. And for the participants, I hope you will use this planning tool to help you shy away from the use of these fossil fuels, and eventually through doing hybrids will redound to lower cost of electricity in the area. This is not only for compliance to RPS, but also for rationalization of the universal charge that being paid by all the consumers all over the country. And eventually the generator will come in those areas, in those visionary areas. And also thank you for Miss Kraus, who are very energetic as always, and to the DOE team and fellow how do you call that, host or trainers. Thank you for all the efforts from the Department of Energy and Renewable Energy Management Bureau,